Hello, everyone. We are here. We are back. It is time, and it has been a strangely long amount of time since I got to give any form of that intro. Of course, you all may know me. I am Titanium Legman, otherwise known as Tom. Usually that's said in reverse. I'm a little rusty. My apologies. And boy, we are back, aren't we? Wasn't expecting there to be this many people already in chat when y'all don't really even know what we're doing today, but we are here. We're going to be talking about the Japan trip. I'm going to be getting back into the swing of things, checking in with y'all, letting you know how I'm doing. And then we have a little bit of a project we're going to be doing on stream as well. So a lot of good stuff going to be happening today, but it is good to see you all in chat. It is an absolute pleasure to be back behind the mic because I haven't done anything on mic in 3 weeks, I think. This is the single longest period of time since I started the channel. I'm pretty sure that I've gone without recording anything. There was that one period of time in the middle of the pandemic where, because of Jane's work, she had to very seriously self-isolate for 2 weeks. So I went up and stayed at my parents' place for a couple of weeks and didn't really have my equipment on me or anything, but that was only 2 weeks. I think this has been the longest period of time that I've gone without doing anything for the channel. You know, obviously we had a couple of videos that went up while I was away, but I had those pre-recorded and set up in advance. So, yeah, this is the first serious vacation I've had since 2019, which is wild. Absolutely insane to think about. Explains why I was feeling so burnt out. That's going to be something that we talk about today. But, guys, I feel great. I feel phenomenal. Coming back stateside, getting back into the swing of things. The routine is going so much smoother than usual. Work is going so much smoother than usual. Lots of good stuff happening in my personal life. Hopefully lots of good stuff happening on the channel side of things. I'm feeling real good. See, we have a lot of people in chat. I'll take the going live off screen in just a second here. But for the moment, we have all sorts of fine folks. Let's see, we've got Canadia, Benjamin V, Noche, Caffeine System, Jacob, Sinister Design, the man himself. Hello, sir. Good to see you all here, as well as any of you who may be lurking. Very good to have you all. So, just so you guys know how this is going to work, because we have a thing that we're going to be doing on stream that I'm going to be turning into a video, this stream VOD is going to be well, maybe I won't take it private. I was thinking I would initially take it private, but it would be nice to have the discussion about Japan and everything up for people who want to watch the VOD of it. Yeah, I think I'm going to revise that plan on the fly. So basically, the second half of this stream, I'm going to be cutting up into the first video that's going up on the channel in a little over a week. So we'll be doing that on the tail end of the stream. But I wanted to start things off today by checking in with y'all, talking about Japan, talking about how things have been going, what's going on with me, and just kind of getting a refresher going on. I've been contemplating throwing together a couple of videos since I got back, but, you know, algorithm is going to be slow because of the fact that I haven't been uploading as regularly or streaming or whatever. So I figured better to get a stream going, get people a little tuned in to the fact that we're back and things are going to be going back up to a more normal pace here on the channel before I put any videos out that I may or may not be consigning to the void because of algorithmic stuff. So we're going to do this, and then either tonight or tomorrow, depending on editing time, I will have the video up that we do live on the stream today. And then I have another video that is in the works that I will have up either Sunday or Monday, depending on when I get this video up, getting back into the normal swing of just general strategy gaming coverage. I see a lot of people saying, sounds like a much needed break. Absolutely much deserved. Thank you. Very much appreciated. And the Gundam miniature is goated. You're talking about the Gundam on the thumbnail, Benjamin. If so, my friend, let me tell you, there's nothing miniature about that Gundam. We're going to talk about that. That is the life-size, to-scale Unicorn Gundam that Jane and I saw in Odaiba. We will definitely be talking about that because that was the tail end of the trip, and it was awesome. But yes, it was definitely a much-needed break. Absolutely. Thank you, Caffeine. Very much so. Want to hear all about the trip? Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of Japan, Tom, have you seen the Unicorn Overlord figures they're releasing? I have, yes. I've been trying to keep up to date on what's been going on with that. I'm not generally a figures kind of guy, but for Unicorn Overlord, I might have to make an exception, so we'll see. I haven't seen anything about pricing or anything yet, but I do want to keep my eye on that. So, love a good tier list video. Hope you had a great time in Japan. Oh, absolutely. And welcome, B-Train. Good to have you. Good to have you. I have been enjoying as well everyone chiming in on my polls that I've been putting out about what constitutes a strategy game and questioning different games that I may or may not think are strategy titles and seeing what y'all think about that. So I'll probably have another one of those go up today. I was going to do that before the stream, but I got a little busy because I went back to the gym, getting back into that routine. We'll talk about all that. We'll talk about all that. Oh, that one is sick. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Be sporadically in chat, currently trying to bang out a week's worth of homework in 48 hours, Lamau. Holy shit, Caffeine. Oh my God, best of luck. I mean, I'll be happy to provide background for you, though, so I hope that that is helpful. Jeez. Did we know that you were... Wait, did we know you were getting back to school? Did you talk about that, or is this a new lore drop for Caffeine? I feel like I vaguely remember this, but I could also be making it up. I'm not sure. Hey, in Canada, with the 32-month member message, good to have you back, buddy. Well, thank you very much, sir. It is good to be back. And if y'all didn't know, Canada, he actually has a little bit of a new thing going on himself. Canada, if you would like to plug your new project, if you have stock left, I don't know where you're at. I haven't had the chance to check today. But if y'all didn't know, Canada put out a couple of mouse pads today, well, yesterday, I guess now, of some of his very high-quality art that you can buy right now on his Etsy shop if he has stock. If he doesn't have stock, ignore everything I'm saying, other than the fact that you should check it out and then hang out and be ready to buy one when he gets them back in stock. Because they look very high quality, and they look very, very nice. And while we don't tend to go for too much of the lewd stuff here, I mean, I'm literally using an Akai Riot Tharja titty mouse pad right now because I've got wrist issues and Jane bought it for me as a gift. So it would be remiss of me not to plug my boys' own products. You can get either Samus or I believe it's Pyra and Mithra, right? If I'm remembering correctly. One or the other, whichever takes your fancy. They look very high quality, very nice. And I can say from experience with just such a mouse pad, degenerate reasons aside, it is extremely comfortable and it does keep my wrist very, very nice and cozy and tasteful. So, check that out. Xenoblade ones are almost gone, just under 30 Metroid ones left. Well, go, bye, bye.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Oh, my God. Oh, here comes Link. Holy.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Link coming in out of nowhere with the 10 gifted, as was foretold. Thank you, sir. I'll read those off once the notifications stop rolling in. Holy.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Oh my God, Kevin, you got it again. How does this keep happening?
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Did I get the chance to see the nightlife car scene? Not really, unfortunately. We'll get into the whole thing here. I am planning...
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
I am planning on doing a whole vlog video about the trip, but I'm waiting on Jane to get me the footage and pictures that she got on her phone before I can start putting that together.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
That'll go more in depth, but we will talk about it today as well. Also, while we're waiting for these notifications to finish up, let's just, waha!
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
As Dariel is on my forehead currently, my shiny, well-shaved forehead. What's up, everybody? It's good to see you all again. It's been quite a long time, even longer since I've been on camera. Jeez.
A zealous
We're going to be doing this one with the webcam, because we're not playing anything today. So apologies if you were expecting any particular gameplay. Not happening today, but If you see me looking over
A
here,
mighty
that's
sword
second monitor,
arm anchored
chat.
by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Yeah, the 10 gifted. Holy smokes. It's been too long since I've been able to do this. I mean, that's fair.
A mighty sword
That's fair,
arm
sir.
anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Looking fresh as hell. Thank you. Thank you. I can partially thank Japan for that, because one of the things I got in Japan was a very high-quality razor. Guys, the first thing I got to say, I think the notifications are done. Yeah, it looks like it. I will welcome all of you in a second, but there's one thing that I can say about going to Japan, and there's a lot of things I can say about going to Japan, but if there's one thing I can say about going to Japan, as an American specifically, exchange rates are awesome. All right? When I was in Japan for the last, well, not for the last 2 weeks, because it's been 5 days since we got back, 6 days, but for the 2 weeks that I was in Japan, the U.S. exchange rate for the U.S. dollar to the yen was about 70 cents U.S. to 100 yen. Functionally, this means that my money and Jane's money was worth 30% more in Japan than it is in the U.S. That is before you consider the fact that the Japanese economy, in a lot of ways, is set up way better than the U.S. economy, so everything is cheaper. Food, electronics, consumables, alcohol, transportation, all significantly cheaper. Jane and I felt like gods when we were in Japan, dude. Holy God. Like, those of you who are in the Discord, you may have seen the pictures that I posted of all of the stuff that we brought back. We had to do the tourist thing where we had to get a huge-ass extra set of luggage just to be able to bring home all the stuff that we got. As a matter of fact, let me show off one of my new favorite shirts. Look at this. That is a Nightfall Raven Armored Core 6 shirt that I got from the Torch store. I was talking about this in the Discord as well. This is a little FromSoft specific store in Shibuya that Jane and I went to that had immaculate merch.
These are beaten, broken
phenomenal.
souls.
Look at this. Look
and
at
yet our
this.
fortunes
ride
ride with them.
sick. I got this. I got a Radon Festival shirt that is literally set up as if it's a music festival. Radon from Elden Ring, obviously. So it's got Radon and, what's the horse, Leonard on the front. And then it's got like a set list on the back with all of the like guest appearances and everything for the actual festival. It's so sick. Jane got a Mikolash shirt. She got the Radon shirt. She got the doll from Bloodborne, like all those. And then there was other stores in that area as well. So I got a sick Ava Unit 1 shirt. She got an Evangelion shirt that was like more of a fashion idols thing. So much cool stuff. And a lot of the clothes in those stores were expensive, but the actual t-shirts, like this is super high quality. Like this, the cotton on this is so thick. It actually fits properly. It feels like it's not going to fall apart. And it was like probably $15. It was insane. Absolutely nuts. The razor that I got that gave me this nice clean shave, and this is a couple days out at this point, was like, I think 60, and it came with an actual normal manual razor. It's got a bunch of different settings. It's actually like high quality. It was insane. It was absolutely nuts. Very good stuff. But before I continue, let me thank all of our welcome all of our new members and thank Link Jedi Master for all of them again. Thank you, sir, as always. The generosity, incredibly appreciated. So welcome to Caffeine System. Amazingly. I don't know how you keep getting away with it. And right at the top of the list, too, there's got to be something going on with the algorithm with that, but I don't know what it would be. Benjamin V, Jacob, Crow, Just Nana, Brendan, not Brandon, I almost said Brandon, Brendan McCree, Asdariel, Harkin, Richard Muse, and Earl. Welcome, guys. Good to have you here. Is your, some of you returning memberships. I hope you enjoy your beans. I hope you enjoy all the other benefits. And hey, maybe you'll even stick around after the fact. Wouldn't that be nice? I wanted to check what you said here, Caffeine. You were saying about your program. Bachelor's in Nutrition program I've been thinking about getting into most of the year. I did mention it a couple of times, I think. Okay, I thought so. That rang a bell, but it's been a little while. So let me catch up with chat here. Oh, you were actually, okay. Canadian, you were asking Akai about how to do the mouse pads. Cool. That makes sense. Absolutely. Because obviously he just did it and worked out well for him. So I hope it's working out well for you as well. Seems like it's been a pretty good response. So again, if y'all are looking for a good mouse pad with some nice art on it from either, well, I think you said what, the Xenoblade ones are sold out. If you're looking for a nice Samus mouse pad, go check out Canadia's Etsy shop. Pick a good piece and support a local artist. Let's see here. Looking chrome, my brother. Thank you. Thank you. It's a cleaner cut than the razor that I have currently. Man, it's wild. It's so good. Food is so cheap. Yeah, dude, seriously. Again, like I've been posting. If you haven't been in the Discord, I highly recommend joining and scrolling back up through some of the channels. I've been doing a lot of posting of pictures from the Japan trip. The food, man. Like, we may as well just start there, right? The food is phenomenal. So high quality. Like, I've been making a lot of my own food, all right? It's fall here, so I've been doing a lot of batch cooking. We'll talk about
anchored
that
by
too, but...
holy purpose.
Hey!
A zealous warrior.
Look at that. Chris3632 subscribed, and then also we got another 10 from Link. Oh my god.
A mighty sword arm,
we'll welcome all y'all guys in a
purpose.
second.
A zealous warrior.
But yeah, we'll talk about all the food that I make, but the food that we got there, like, holy god. The whole thing in Japan is that typically you get
a
set
mighty
meals,
sword
right?
arm anchored by holy
and the
purpose.
idea of the set meal
A zealous warrior
is you get like the main dish, rice, a drink, maybe a side, right?
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy
like
purpose. A zealous warrior.
2,000 to 2,600 yen if you're not at like a super high scale place, which in U.S. with the exchange rate is like
a mighty sword arm
14 to
anchored
18
by
bucks. It's
holy
ridiculous,
purpose.
and
A
it's so much
zealous
food,
warrior.
and it's so high quality compared to what you're going to find in most restaurants in America that aren't going to be charging you $50 for a meal, right?
A mighty
It's
sword
insane.
arm anchored
The service
by
is so
holy
prompt.
purpose.
Everyone is so
A zealous
polite.
warrior.
If you need anything, you just toss out a sumimasen, and then they come right over as soon as they're able to, ask you exactly what you need, what they can get for you. It's
a
wild,
mighty sword
dude.
arm
It's
anchored
absolutely
by
insane.
holy purpose.
One of
A
the things that I was
zealous warrior.
like the most worried about in Japan was being able to go to like a restaurant and be able to order properly.
A
without
mighty
making an ass of
sword
myself,
arm
right? 'Cause I
anchored
know very
by
little
holy
Japanese.
purpose.
I know sumimasen, which is
A
excuse
zealous
me.
warrior.
Zealous warrior. I know like hi is like yes or like acknowledgement, right?
A mighty
Konnichiwa,
sword arm
gomen,
anchored
things like
by
that.
holy purpose. A
Once you
zealous
get more
warrior.
complicated, it gets a little touchy, especially because I have issues with memorizing language because of the whole chemotherapy thing. As a matter of
mighty
fact,
sword
there
arm
was
anchored
a
by holy
phrase.
purpose. A zealous warrior.
Can I remember it? There's a phrase that Jane taught me that was basically like, "Thank you, this food was delicious." I can't remember it off the top of my head right now. But after she taught it to me, I was using it in restaurants, and like all the serving like staff and all the cooks and everything were like insanely impressed that I knew this phrase that I can't even remember now. But everyone was just so enthusiastic in interacting with you. And not just in like a fake customer service kind of way, but a very genuine way that I really appreciated. So that was awesome. On top of all the food being phenomenal. Like chicken katsu curry, tonkatsu curry, all the various different types of ramen, all you can eat wagyu, just like all of the convenience store food, like delicious egg salad sandwiches, tuna salad sandwiches, onigiri, the fried chicken in convenience stores. Like I knew it was good, but holy God, was it good? A bottle of water is like 120 yen, which is like 80 cents US, and it's 100% pure mineral water. Like, what are we doing over here, man? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. Let me welcome the next 10 here, and then I'll catch up on chat as well. Let's see here. Holy smoke, so many people. Welcome, and thank you again, Link. Very much appreciated, sir, as always. Welcome to Kai, C. Harrison, Evan, McConaughey, or McConaughey, maybe? Not entirely sure. Will Pry, Dark Neos, Bruce Griffith, Solu, Nitro Warlord, and Mode Null. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Good to have you here. Very much enjoying your presence, and I hope that you enjoy it in turn. Let's see here. You can just get a giant 2-liter jug of water at the convenience store for 66 cents. Yep. Exactly. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Shirt is top tier. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Got a Bloodborne and a Dark Souls 3 shirt on my trip. Nice. Hell yeah. Is volume a smidge low? Probably only when I was standing up and then when there's notifications going on. I can turn up my mic as well. a little bit. We won't have background music at all this stream, so I was thinking about doing it, but because I want to turn this footage into a video, I didn't want to mess with potentially having music that I'm accidentally recording, so we're just going to ignore that. Learning about vitamins and supplements and the U.S. Physical Activity Guidelines this block. Exciting stuff. How bad are the U.S. Physical Activity Guidelines, Caffeine? Do please tell us, because I'm sure they're not good. So it's okay. The next thing about Japan, right? And if anyone has any specific questions, by all means, please ask me. I'd be happy to answer. But the amount of walking that Jane and I did in Japan was insane. And fortunately, she and I are both very good with cardio. Despite my leg and all the issues with that, I do a lot of walking and a fair bit of biking when I'm specifically at the gym. I just walk all over the place, just on my days off and stuff. So I was pretty well equipped for it. And then Jane has been doing an absolute shit ton of Peloton biking. So her cardio is really good, better than mine at this point. To say nothing of the fact that she's in better shape in terms of weight than I am as well. So we didn't have too many major issues as far as walking around was concerned. But the amount of walking that you do in Japan, just getting from place to place, and despite the amount of steps that you're putting in, how effortless it feels in most cases is insane. Like, there's a reason that the US is so unhealthy, right? And it's because we're expected to drive everywhere. In Japan, we did plenty of public transport, getting on the subways and the train lines and all that type of stuff. We never used cabs. We used buses a couple of times. But even so, everything that you want to get to is in reasonable walking distance. For example, we went to the Osaka Aquarium, right? And the walk from the train station to the aquarium was like 10 minutes. But we walked there, we walked back, we're walking to and from train stations, all that type of stuff. So it wasn't uncommon for any given day, by the end of the day, for my phone to have tracked anywhere from 15,000 to 32,000 steps in a day. And yeah, by the end of it, like, I was getting blisters and my feet were tired and everything, even with high quality shoes that we picked up specifically for the trip. It just felt good. Like, I feel phenomenal physically just because of all the cardio activity that I got in Japan. I went to the gym today for the first time since we got back, right? Because I've been doing a lot of like other stuff around the apartment because of things that are going on. We'll talk about in a second. But I haven't had the chance to get back to the gym, right? Finally went today. Felt amazing. I haven't done weight training in 3 weeks. But with all the cardio that I'd been doing, I still felt like my body was physically up to the task. So I did a fairly light workout. You know, we did 6 plates on the leg press, 110 pounds on the leg extension, calf raises, lying leg raises on front and side, hip abductors, adductors, all sorts of stuff like that. A little bit lighter than I wanted to go, but I didn't want to push it too much since I hadn't done any strength training in a while. And I still crushed it, man. I feel phenomenal. Like, absolutely great. It's like, God, no wonder people who are in any country that isn't America are in so much better shape. It's nuts. It was so good. Like, I want to live there just for the physical benefits of the way that everything is set up from an infrastructure standpoint. To say nothing of the quality of the food or how affordable everything is. It's just absolutely insane. Absolutely nuts. Let's see here. What else is going on in chat? I want to make sure I'm not ignoring anybody. So relieved about the mousepad sales. Been so anxious and worried about it for months. People are too nice. Hell yeah, brother. Absolutely. I know you've talked about it with me for quite a while and everything, so I knew you were working on it. I'm very glad that it's turned out well for you. I know from experience with doing YouTube stuff and everything, it can be very strenuous trying to get a big thing like that set up. But then seeing it pay off is so worth it. Absolutely. So very, very happy for you. Congratulations. Gocho-sama. No, that was not the phrase. Oh, wow. Benjamin. Yes. So oishi, yes, is the simple phrase, but it's, arigato, totemo oishikatta desu. There we go. That's the phrase. It was lurking in there. Oishi reminded me. Thank you, guys. Arigato, totemo oishikatta desu. Confidence, proper speed of saying it, and you'll impress anybody. The number of times that I would bust that out as we were like getting ready to walk out, or as someone like cleared our plates off of our table or whatever, and the like triple take that they did, and like the cook would poke his head out of the kitchen and be like, "Oh, Nihongo Jozu." And every time I'd be like, "Oh, sensei, she taught me," and point at Jane. But they were always very impressed. So if you're ever in Japan, or you're ever like in a Japanese restaurant and you maybe want to try and show off a little bit, arigato, so thank you. Totemo oishikatta desu. Boom. There it is. Thank you, chat, for reminding me. Problem's not an oil baron. Wax his mustache. I mean, I would be more than happy to have an oil baron in chat supporting the channel. It'd be much appreciated. So, by all means, be honest, Link. The fried chicken is dangerous. Yes, it is. We're doing more than enough walking to walk it off. But yeah, if you're ever in Japan, there's 4 at this point convenience stores that are a common sight. You've got Family Mart, got Lawson's, you've got 7-Eleven, surprisingly enough, and then New Deal is a new place that's been opening up recently. Bar none, the base fried chicken that you want is a Family Chickie from Family Mart. Best seasoning, best crust, best flavor. It's phenomenal. Now, what's notable is this is not some fake chicken, like gray goo McDonald's chicken crap, right? U.S. McDonald's, I have to specify. We'll talk about that too. These are actually made with proper chicken thighs. It's got the fat on. It's real chicken. Like, you eat it and you're like, yes, I'm eating chicken right now, not whatever slop this is that I just got from the fast food place. It's phenomenal. It tastes incredible, and it's like $1 or like $1.20. It's ridiculous. Now, if you want flavored stuff, that's where I recommend Lawson's. Lawson's has better spicy chicken. They had an actual like tartar sauce infused chicken that was really good. They have a cheese one that I didn't try, and a whole bunch of other stuff, as well as a really nice like crispy chicken that I enjoyed. But if you're just going for the baseline, Family Mart, that's the way to go. I love walking. That part I wish we do more as Americans. I wish so too. Absolutely. Bro, the place that I work for my day job is literally across the street from our apartment. I still drive because you know what? The sidewalk only goes halfway there. And then I have to run across the street, which is a major intersection. And there's no sidewalk. So I'm like, well, screw it, man. Like, I'm not going to risk getting hit by a car just to run across the street to go to my work. Fuck that. Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. Infrastructure is so bad here. City streets were hard on my feet after a while. They were. Yeah. Yeah, they were. That's why Jane insisted we both went and got really high quality shoes and like got our feet measured and tested and everything. And it helped a lot. It absolutely helped a ton. If I was still using like my normal $80 New Balances that I rock with, it would have been a nightmare. But that helped significantly. I highly recommend that if you're going to be walking around Japan a lot, which we did. So yeah, walkable city's good. Absolutely. Hey, Navi. Hello. Good to see you, man. Glad I live in France for that too. I imagine that that's probably good for it. The U.S. is really one of the only places that has that issue with walkability for cities. I know I see it with people from Japan and Europeans of various flavors and types constantly. They're just like, what do you mean I can't walk to the convenience store? What do you mean I can't walk to the grocery store or to the doctor's office? Like, you just can't do it. And not like, we're not talking rural here, because then that's an issue of distance, and that makes more sense. We're talking like literally suburban environments. I'm looking at trying to get in with a doctor that's literally 5 minutes down the road, technically speaking, and that's only because you got to wind through a neighborhood by car. I could easily walk there in 15 minutes if there was walkable streets, and there's not. It's so annoying. That's why I love Chicago. Get so much more walking in than anywhere else I've lived in the U.S. That's fair. That's fair. There's certain cities that are set up for it, yeah. But if you're in like a suburban environment or definitely a rural environment, good luck. Recommendation for most adults is 150 plus minutes of moderate or higher intensity per week, mostly aerobic with strength training at least twice a week. Get some good shoes and good inserts for sure. It's changed my life. I think it's around 25% of people currently meeting the guidelines in the U.S. off the top of my head. It varies by state. Yeah, it sounds about right. Sounds about right. What's sad is I would pretty much meet that so long as I meet my gym goals for the week, and I'm still overweight. Like, I'm in good shape, relatively speaking. I have a much more negative like impression of my weight and my appearance and everything than I actually have, as other people have told me, as Jane has told me. But even so, I should be in way better shape. Our lifestyles just aren't set up for it. And boy, howdy, did Japan make that very apparent. We saw maybe like 6 severely overweight people when we were there. And I think 3 of them had what appeared to be legitimate medical disabilities that would cause that type of weight gain, right? And that was just visually. Who knows what the other ones had. So, like, it makes sense, right? It's not like you just walk out to a Walmart here and become disgusted with humanity. You're very welcome, Canada. You're very welcome. Oh, the phrase is much more advanced. Yes. Yes. Yep. So glad you went. This is great. I'm so glad that I can gush about it. I can't wait to do the video. It's going to be so good. Usually small college towns in America are more walkable. More so, yeah. Jane and I both went to Westchester University as our college of choice, at least for undergrad. She went to a different college for grad, but even then, it was walkable, but like annoyingly so. Like all of the stuff in town was probably a good 15-20 minutes walk uphill, and some of it was through some pretty like poorly lit back alley streets that things definitely went down in based off of all the police reports that we got on campus. So it was walkable, yes, but not in a way that Japan is. Not at all. Not at all. But yeah, so what is going on with me? We'll talk more about Japan as well, but there's some relevant stuff going on that's going to affect, what's going on the channel and me and everything. So first off, again, I'm doing great. I feel so much better. I feel like I look so much better mentally and emotionally. I'm like up here, man, when honestly before the trip I was way down here. Like, I've not been shy talking about mental health stuff and everything on the channel before, especially with the whole like being a cancer survivor thing. But having finally had the chance to go to Japan and be away from everything for a while and just be enjoying for the first time in half a decade, if not more, honestly. Yeah, really honestly more. Last vacation I went on was in college. Me and Jane went to Disney and Universal with my parents. That was 8 or 9 years ago now. I realized just how burnt out and tired and legitimately actually very much depressed I've been. Not now. Like, I'm feeling so much better now. But I feel like it's something that maybe hasn't been super apparent in terms of my forward-facing presence on the channel, but I definitely been feeling it. The struggle to try and stream, the struggle to try and make videos, the struggle to keep up with exercise and chores and trying to take care of myself and all that. It was becoming extremely hard. Definitely was not in a great place in terms of just maintaining my life. But now, oh my God, I feel so much better. I just needed the time away. Man, I needed it so bad. So that's why we haven't done any streams or videos the last couple of days since Jane and I got back. I've been working on just getting the routine going again, getting settled back in. I've been jet lagged to shit. It's been so bad. I'm finally fixing my sleep schedule now, but there was 3 or 4 days in a row there where I'd fall asleep at like 8 and like p.m. Eastern and wake up at 2:30, 3 a.m. and not be able to get back to sleep, be wide awake. And it was just throwing me off so bad. So the last couple of days, I worked on forcing myself to stay awake until 10, 10:30, 11, midnight, a more normal time for me to fall asleep. And then getting up 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock, a more reasonable time for me to get up. And I'm feeling so much better as a result. I needed to focus on fixing that. That was a big deal. And just my body really wanted to stick to Japan time, even though I desperately needed it to not. So that's been really good. Like I said, got back to the gym today, did a fairly light workout, all things considered, in terms of what I tend to do, but it felt great to get back to. Actually spoke to a guy, a personal trainer at the gym, about potentially working with him to figure out more exercises that I can do that aren't going to be potentially damaging or strenuous for my leg. That's something I've been wanting to do for a while, so we're going to do that. Hopefully work on getting some more weight loss and muscle gain going on there. I've been doing a lot of cooking. I shared a picture in the Discord today. I've got some Mississippi pot roast going. That's going to be absolutely phenomenal. I made a huge batch of Indian curry last night. The night before that, I did this massive Italian sausage, like Italian tomato sausage bake. That's been phenomenal. Jane and I have been having that over toasted sourdough. That's been great. So we're getting back into that process of properly prepping meals. So I'm not worried about figuring things out on the fly. I've got time any given night where I'm not worried about cooking. And then the big one, I managed to secure Jane and I a new apartment. Obviously, if you can see right now, the back of the camera has never been particularly decorated, but I had a Tekkadan Iron-Blooded Orphans flag behind me there. That's been taken down, and then all of our other pictures and everything have been taken down because by the end of the month-ish, Jane and I should be moving to a new apartment. It won't be a crazy move. It's within the same apartment complex that we're in, but it's going to be an extra like 150 square feet. There will be 2 bedrooms, one of which is going to become my recording studio and office because right now, the last 5 years that you guys have been watching the channel, I've been set up in the middle of our living room, basically, which has made it very hard for Jane to like be on her PC or be on the couch behind me watching TV or playing a game or whatever. So I'm going to have my own dedicated office space that I'm going to be able to trick out with like shelves and like background for the camera with all of my merch and all of my models and everything. I'm going to be able to actually get like some foam eggshell on the walls so we've got less acoustics going on. She'll be able to be doing stuff in the apartment while I'm recording or streaming. It's going to be great. We're so excited about it. They're renovating the whole place for us, putting in new floors, new appliances. It's going to be awesome. So that said, obviously, coming right off the back of being out of the country for nearly 2.5 weeks, we're scrambling to like get things packed, get things set up, figure out how we're going to be moving the heavier stuff, talking to friends, all that type of stuff. So even though I'm working on getting a normal schedule going again for the channel, it still might be a little disrupted for the next couple of weeks until we get that move done and get settled into the new place. The goal is to have it not be too disruptive. Like I mentioned at the top of the stream, I'm hoping to have a couple of videos out within the next 2-3 days, get some streams going again, all that type of good stuff. But I can only predict so much. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But so that's going to be happening. That will be a thing. And then I will be more than happy to show off my actual office. Like I'm going to have a proper office for the channel, guys. Once I get it all set up, it's going to be super cool. We'll do a little tour and I'll show off everything that I've got set up. I'm very excited for that. So that's going to be a great time. Boy, what else? Those of you who've been sticking around the channel, and I'll catch up with chat in a second here because I know it's been a second since I caught up with you guys, but I have been continuing to work my day job. Those of you who've been around the streams and the Discord know that I was potentially in a position where I was going to be quitting. I was doing some wage negotiations. Good news, I'm not quitting. Managers have been talked to. Work procedures have been discussed. And your boy got himself a $1 raise. It's not a huge deal, but it's something. And seeing as how this day job is just something that I'm continuing to do while YouTube continues to grow and revenue becomes ever greater from YouTube until I can make it my actual sole full-time focus and not be working 60 to 70-hour weeks, I'll take it. I'll take it, man. It helps immensely, especially, because rent's going up, going to the new place, all that type of stuff. So we're not going to be solely dedicated to YouTube yet, like we were 3 years ago, but still, I'll be in a more comfortable position. I might be able to afford some more tech upgrades, different stuff like that. So that's a really good update. And then there was something else that I wanted to bring up. What was it? Oh, I've been in talks with my channel, not management team, but my channel partners. And they've been going through some shakeups that were happening when I was actually in Japan. But I've been talking to some new people, and there's actually a program that they're running that I'm hoping to be able to sign up for that is going to hopefully help me get a little bit more focus on developing aspects of the channel that I've been struggling to do, namely getting multi-streaming going on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously, and then getting more consistent shorts content out as well, like alongside the normal video content that I've been doing, because like it or not, that is very important aspect of doing content on YouTube nowadays. So that should be good as well. Don't be surprised if you see an uptick in things like shorts in the future. If you actually see me announcing like, hey, we finally have multi-streaming going with Twitch and YouTube simultaneously, different stuff like that. So that's also good, but it's just, there's been a lot. There's been a lot that's going on, man. There's been so much. Okay, so let me catch up with chat here. Holy smokes. Let's see here. Overall health measurements need to be taken into account. You can have some extra weight and still be pretty healthy. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm built like a grizzly bear. I know that. Absolutely. Between the Russian blood, the Irish blood, the Italian blood, and the Polish blood, I'm built to be big, man. All right? Like, I'm not expecting to be svelte, and I don't need to be. But I have a little bit extra weight compared to what I should have, unless I start lifting real heavy, in which case, have that proper, like, strongman physique going on, which I'd be totally down for, by the way. But we're not quite there yet. It'll be a while before we hit that point, if ever. But in the meantime, I do need to shed a little bit of weight. No, the struggle man finally back on track. Indeed, indeed. Definitely sound much better now. I'm glad you and Jane were able to do this. Yeah. Yeah. If you guys didn't know, we've been trying to get to Japan since 2019. We literally had it planned. Flights were scheduled and everything a month before the pandemic hit. And then Japan takes that stuff real seriously. So they were closed to tourism for like 3 years, I think. Then I had to worry about getting the money saved back up and everything to be able to do it and yada, yada, yada. So it's been in the works for a long time, but it was phenomenal actually getting it to happen. We're definitely going to be going again probably in the next couple of years. We'll see. My next focus is on making sure that I can get a new car if I have to, because mine's getting pretty not good. Weirdly enough, I'm so nocturnal, I was immune to the jet lag. See, that's how I would be if I didn't have to be up for my day job at 6 in the morning. Otherwise, it would have been fine. But I could have just dealt with it and kind of let the cycle organize itself on its own. But 400 peppers. I have many peppers in that Mississippi pot roast, but they're pepperoncinis, so they're not that spicy. So, you know. Working with a professional trainer can be a great kickstart if you've been stuck. It can be, yeah. It was nice because I was asking them, like, hey, do you guys have anyone on staff who's kind of equipped to work with people who have a long-term mild disability? And they kind of had that look of like, how severe of a disability we're talking about here. I was like, all right, well, look, listen, like, showed them the scar on my leg, and like, I've got full range of movement. I've got strength. Like, I've been doing, again, leg exercises for years. It's fine. But there's certain stuff that puts a lot of strain on the legs. Deadlifts, proper squats, lunges, things like that. That either I can't do or I probably can, but I definitely need to make sure that I've got good professional oversight to make sure I'm not doing it wrong so that I don't hurt the prosthetic. Because as I've talked about before, normal bones, normal muscles, ligaments, joints can heal. A fake insert, if it gets damaged, it gets damaged. There's nothing you're doing about that, and then it's got to get replaced. It's a whole thing. So I need to make absolutely sure that I'm not in the process of trying to, PR on the deadlift and then have something twist, or God forbid, have like the plastic in my knee shatter and have it be a whole catastrophe. So, but they felt confident that they could work with that. I was showing them the fact that I'm missing muscle mass in my right leg and everything, and they felt like they could definitely work with that. So we'll see. I've got to text the guy, see how much it would cost, what he's able to do for me, all that type of stuff. But I'm feeling good about it. It should be good. Hopefully. Maybe. We'll see. Moving is always exciting. It is. Yes, absolutely. Having your own studio space is huge for sure. Yeah. Yeah. When I first started, it was the middle of the pandemic, and I was living at home with my family, and I was just in my bedroom, which worked, but it's a little different. And then, I've been just in the middle of our living room for the last 5 years here with Jane. So it'll be nice to have my own space for sure. Sound eating walls, indeed. Did we go to the Nintendo Museum? We did not. So let's get back to talking about Japan a little bit here. Now that like Tom's general life updates are, I'd say, generally out of the way. So we did a lot. We started off in Akihabara. We spent 4 days there. And then from Akihabara, we went to Kyoto. From Kyoto, we went to Osaka. While we were in Osaka, we did a day trip. I mean, we did day trips all over the place, but this one's very much worth mentioning. We did a day trip to Hiroshima. And then we went from Osaka back to Tokyo and stayed in Akasaka. And from there, we did a whole bunch of traveling around to the general Tokyo area. Akihabara, probably my favorite, just in general. It fit the gaming nerd weeb aesthetic. Obviously, if you know anything about Akihabara, you know that. But there was just something about being around a bunch of people who were fashionable but not hoity-toity. And like all the gaming advertisements, like all the different like Blue Archive and Genshin and all the huge ads for that. Having all sorts of retro game stores, manga stores. There was a Warhammer store there, which was awesome. Like all that different type of stuff, as well as all the street vendors, all the little local eateries, all that type of stuff was so cool. It was just congested enough to feel busy without being so congested that you couldn't move around anywhere. And everything felt very much like it was localized to be accessible, even more so than the rest of Japan. Like, when Jane and I went back to Akihabara at the end of the trip, we immediately felt so much more comfortable because we just knew our way around immediately. That was an absolutely phenomenal experience. That's where we got the majority of our merch. Again, we went to that Warhammer store. I was chatting with a guy there who there was a lot of white Westerners in there, man. It was like our bastion of safety. But it was super cool because we were talking to one of the employees and he was saying like, yep, they're part of the official Warhammer Store network. They get like all their models and all their product and everything directly from Games Workshop. They're one of 32 stores in Japan as a whole. And it's a really cool time for them because there's really no other miniature wargaming games in Japan. But I mean, think about Japan with things like Gunpla and figures and everything. It's right up their alley of building small things, painting them, making them look really nice, and then having really in-depth, dense, rules-heavy gaming that they can engage in. So it's been a really good time for them, especially having a spot like that in Akihabara. So it was really cool to see a very strong blending of cultures there that I really, really enjoyed. It felt like a nice little way for an aspect of Western culture to be brought to Japan in a way that they very much appreciated. So that was super cool. There was just all sorts of different used game stores and different places that had manga, figures, different merch. Had Mandarake, Animate, Ami Ami, G Store. I can't even remember them all, dude. Obviously, like your Bic cameras and things like that. There was just so much cool stuff, and it was dense, but navigable. Like, at first, Jane was saying that she regretted going to Akihabara first because it was such a shock to the senses. But I feel like it was actually good because it gave us a good idea of what we could expect in terms of the way that Japanese infrastructure is set up. Like, with how tall buildings are and how each floor is its own designated store or completely dedicated to one type of product if you have a building that is dedicated to one store in particular. How you kind of need to be able to navigate in between buildings down side streets to find other entire stores. Like, whereas in the US, it would just be like a seedy alley with like some backdoor entrances to places or whatever. Like, no, whole restaurants, whole stores, whole new places are down these side alleys, and then they'll lead you to entire new places, which was so cool. So it felt like going to Akihabara first was actually very beneficial to us kind of getting an understanding of the way that Japan is set up. But yeah, we didn't go to the Nintendo Museum. Sorry, all this talking is taking a toll on my throat. Holy smokes. They had this whole ticket system that we didn't even want to try to mess with because it's like if you even get a ticket, you might not get tickets for both people. And then you have to be there at a specific time on a specific date. And the ticket that you get might not even line up with when you're going to be in the area. So with how new it is and how popular it was going to be, we didn't even bother. Maybe down the line. We didn't really mess with any major locations like that. Like, we didn't do Japan Universal or Japan Disneyland or anything like that. It was mainly stores and then public access museums, historical sites, things like that. That was the major thing that we did. A lot of walking around, sightseeing, different temples, stuff like that. And then just other cultural hotspots that aren't like a specific place you need admission to a lot of the time. Like, we got admission to the Osaka Aquarium, but that was not hard to do at all. A bit late as I was busy with work. Nothing wrong with that, Karnak. Good to have you, brother. Good to have you. Akihabara is very fun for sure. Getting around was no problem. We had the pocket Wi-Fi. That worked very well most of the time. The only time that we had issues getting around was when we'd be trying to navigate somewhere with Google Maps, and it would just absolutely shit the bed. Like, I have grievances with Google Maps in Japan. I also have some grievances with their signage in Japan. There's just been certain times, like most of the time it's fine. Most of the time, everything is very clearly described, directions pointed out, different stations are named, or major locations that you're trying to get to have signs, whatever. But every once in a while, you'll come across a spot where it's like, oh yes, this subway station is to your right. And then you go to the right. There's no more signs. The signs disappeared. There's signs for other stations, signs for other lines, other major attractions. Place you're trying to get to, no signs anymore. This happened in particular when we were trying to get to the Ginza line when we were in Osaka, I think. Was it? Yeah, it was Osaka. And it just was like, okay, go up this escalator. There's a sign that looks like it's telling you to go back down the escalator. That's the only sign. Okay. I'm just going to ask this security guard really quick. Surely he would know where to go. Him and his buddy, right? Two older gentlemen. They confer for a minute. Start arguing as one's pointing left and the other's pointing up to the right. Bicker, 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 bicker. They agree it's to the left, which for me is to the right because I'm, facing them. Like, well, that's not where the sign said, but the sign told us to go back down the way we came, and then the signs down there told us to go back up the way we came, so that's clearly just an endless loop. So sure, we'll try it. Got completely lost. Found a sign for the Ginza line. Finally. Okay, cool. Follow that, follow that, follow that. Wind up back at the bottom of the escalator with the sign at the top that tells us to go back down the escalator. With the same two old security guards standing in the corner directing traffic. I'm like, okay. At this point, we're like 13 days into the trip. I've got some wicked blisters on my right foot. My knee hurts. Got some friction burns. I'm tired. It's like 10 p.m. Last train is at 11. I'm starting to get a little stressed. Like, this is bullshit. And the entire time, Google Maps is like, you arrived at your destination. It's like, well, escalator's back that way. Entrance to the JR line that would take us like back to Tokyo, but definitely not the line that would take us back to our hotel, is over there. And over here is a major shopping complex that definitely does not have a subway station in it. So the only option is in front of us, there's a major construction site. So I guess let's just walk around that and see what happens. And that was the answer. That was the answer, chat. The sign that looked like it was pointing us back down the escalator was actually saying go around this construction site. Even though it wasn't like go right, and then when you get to that corner, another sign that says turn left, and then another sign at the end of that corner that says turn left and go up the escalator, which is where it was. It was a sign that had an arrow that went like this, with the arrow pointing down this way, which to me and to Jane reads as turn around and go back down the way you came, not go around this obstruction and then go up, which is what it was describing. So finally, after we did a couple of loops of this same area of the subway, we found around this big whole block. It's a whole city block that was being constructed. There's an escalator. No signage, but an escalator. We went up it. At the top of that escalator, there was a sign for the Ginza line that said to turn and go up the next escalator and then up again, and there it was. The subway that we were looking for, that Google Maps swore to God we had already arrived at, even though there was nowhere to go, and I looked under my shoe and it wasn't there either, was actually up 3 stories, technically behind us. And that is what finally took us to our hotel. I had some choice words. Let me tell you, if there was anyone in that station that understood English, they were getting blown back by the force of the words I was spitting. It was toxic, for sure. I don't even remember what I was saying. But I was not happy. I was in pain. I was tired. I was worried we weren't going to be able to get a train back to our hotel. And the signage was dog shit. But the majority of the time, that was not the case. About 75% of the time, Google Maps also works. The other 25% of the time, it's going to tell you that you're going the wrong way, or that you're going the right way, only to be like, wait, no, you were going the wrong way. Turn around and go back the other way, you idiot. Or just not be able to pick up your location at all, even if you're outside where the GPS should be able to find you. Part of that is the density of everything, with how many buildings are clustered around you and like whatever bridges and things might be over you, just how many people might be around you. But other times it was just like, you should clearly be able to see me. It is 6 a.m. No one's out yet. The streets are empty. And I'm in a fairly open area. Why can you not see me? So I have my grievances with that. Part of it's just Google's fault. But part of it is definitely the density of Japan. But I think considering how dense it really is, And it's impossible to accurately describe so that you understand it without, like, I can't describe it in a way that you will understand without having been there. Just how dense this place is. It's fair. Speaking of which, let's talk about the density. Oh my God. Oh my God. Some of these stations are insane, dude. The number of times that I was trying to find a convenience store, an ATM, a restaurant that was in a train station, and I went down like 4 subterranean levels to find said establishment was nuts. Like, I fully believe that there are probably people who live down in the tunnels of these train stations. I'm not talking like the tunnels that the trains go through. The pedestrian tunnels that have all of these clothing, like full, like Uniqlo, like the well-known brand name Japanese clothing store, full Uniqlo stores. Full stores dedicated just to watches, jewelry, wallets, thrift stores, convenience stores, full pubs like Irish pubs, British pubs, Japanese-style eateries, ramen places, bakeries, McDonald's, full convenience stores. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just like, I can walk out of this place and be on the street. Except you're 4 layers underground with an entire 17-story hotel with a train station that has its own 3 stories in the bottom of it. You're underneath all of that right now. I could not comprehend some of these labyrinths that I was navigating my way through. It was insane. It was just so nuts. Like, there are absolutely people who just live down here and are lost. Like, this is where the homeless people of Japan are, in these tunnels. And they're technically homeless, but like, they've got everything they could possibly need. With a little bit of money, you can survive down there forever. No questions asked. There's bathrooms, there's lockers, there's like places that you can get drinks, there's everything and anything. Like, I'm trying to figure out what would lead so many people to be on basement layer 5 of the Osaka main train station, the main terminal, and just be getting a bowl of ramen, or getting some clothes from Uniqlo, or just sitting at the bar and having some drinks. Like, brother, how did you get here? It's like, and that's what's insane. They're not even like desolate ghost towns. Like, they're hopping. Every single time I found myself lost in those tunnels, just wandering around and seeing what was on offer, there was dozens of people around. In every establishment, in every tunnel I walked into, there was always at least 10 people. I don't get it. Are y'all just lost like I am? I imagine not, because they're all moving with a purpose. Seems like they know exactly where they're going. How the hell do you know that this ramen place is down here? I just don't get it. It was nuts, but it was also really cool. It was very, very cool. Knowing that you could pretty much turn a corner no matter where you were, and at the very least have a convenience store, if not like a pretty decently quality restaurant or clothing store or something, made just wandering around in any city that we were in Japan so comfortable. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. People complain about the subway being confusing to get around in the intro to Persona 5, but no, that's real. Yeah, exactly. And I had heard that. I didn't know that this was the case to a certain degree. People like Canada have told me about it. Our buddy Dante has been to Japan multiple times. He told us about it. Jane has watched, and as a result, I've watched so many Chris Broad Abroad of Japan videos. So we have an idea, but especially if you've lived in America all your life, and doubly so if, like me, you've been living in rural America for the majority of it, and then in like suburban America the last 4 or 5 years, you are not prepared. You are not prepared. You got to go spelunking. You need like an adventurer's kit with full of rope, torches, rations, a grappling hook, and a map if you hope to be able to get around in one of those places without a smartphone to guide you. It's insane. Absolutely nuts. Basement dwelling level Japan. Seriously. Absolutely. Homeless and roof over your head. Yeah. Seeing all that probably makes a couple of different anime adjacent media make a lot more sense. Well, exactly. Precisely. Precisely. And that's what Canadian is saying with Persona. I've heard people say the same thing about the Oxa games, stuff like that. Same type of deal. Like, it's just real. It's just how it is, which is nuts. You walk into any given store, any given building. You're like, oh, yeah, you know, whatever. I'm on the ground floor. And then you see an elevator. It's got 6 basement buttons. You're like, usually if you're in America, that's like the maintenance level and the custodian level. That's it. Maybe there's like a generator floor down there. Then you go down to one of those floors and you'll be in a brightly lit, cheery place. There's going to be a full bakery. There's going to be a bunch of employees ready to help you with whatever you need. People living their grand old lives down there. And then again, you think about it and you're like, there's 27 layers of infrastructure directly above my head right now. It's nuts. Again, so one of the places that we stayed was actually when we stayed in Osaka. We stayed in, what was it called? I can't remember the name of the hotel right now, but it's the hotel that's actually built into the Osaka main terminal train station. And it was a very nice place. Very swanky. Way swankier than I expected it to be, especially for the price. But there was a whole section of that building that was dedicated just to the hotel. And then in the same building is where you had the Pokemon store, the Nintendo store, the One Piece store, the Capcom store, an art gallery, a bakery, multiple restaurants. And when I say multiple, I mean like 25 restaurants. And then the whole rest of it was like upscale shopping and bars. And then once you got down to like layer 2, that's where you had all the train station stuff. And then you went to the subterranean levels, and it's like, yes, basement level 1 is just an entire grocery store with a fresh baked bakery goods area, a fresh cut fish area and butcher's area, and all of the different boxed goods that you could need. Like, there were so many people there who were just doing their shopping who probably came from all over Osaka just to come to the basement of the Osaka station terminal to get all their grocery shopping done and then hop on the train and go back to wherever they came from. Like, then you go down another layer and it's like, yes, here's the sweets, cafes, and alcohol section for an entire second floor of a basement. Like, we could never hear. It just wouldn't happen. It would be impossible. Absolutely nuts.
These are beaten, broken souls.
Louis
And yet
Ferranda
our
has
fortunes
subscribed.
ride
Welcome.
with them.
Welcome, Louis. Very good to have you here with us, my friend. Thank you for joining us. Oh. So my 18 plus question? Wait, what? What was your 18 plus question? Did I miss it? Oh. God, there's more questions or comments that I missed than I expected. Sorry. And Renee is here. Hello, Renee. Just bought the ultimate starter set like 5 minutes ago, incidentally. Hey, nice. Very, very nice. Enjoy. Yeah, I had a big game. I went to my local game store. I played a 1,000-point game of Necrons versus Necrons last night, and I nearly won. Difference of like 4 points. It was such a close game. It was awesome. So yeah, enjoy the ultimate starter set. Did you go to see any of the 18 plus stores? We did. Some of which was just like, there's an 18 plus floor of a random store that we're in. Okay. This might trigger some people in chat. Apologies if that's the case. I didn't do this. It's just the way it's set up. So to answer Canadian's question, there was a couple of times where Jane and I went into, I guess they were individual stores, but it was just like one floor of a building that are very 18 plus. And there's like no like checking IDs to enter, whatever. It's just like, oh, okay. I turn a corner. There's a doorway here. I start to walk down these stairs and oh my God, there's a lot of posters with naked anime girls on them. Whoa. Suddenly. And it's like literally where the door, like where the entryway goes out to is just like manga, like some Inuyasha stuff. Maybe there's like a Genshin Impact Ganyu standee, some like Gunpla merch, whatever. You just walk through this doorway and it's like, those are triple Fs. Holy shit. Okay. And then you get down to the actual store itself, and I don't think I can describe, like, I don't think I can get away with talking about on YouTube some of the stuff that we saw down there. It was pretty wild. My favorite experience with that, though, was we wandered into a random store that, like, the third floor was like an NSFW shop. But then it had 2 floors to itself. So it was like the third floor was where the store started, and you could just walk up to that. Or you could take the elevator up. But then it had a 4th floor that you couldn't take the elevator to. You had to walk up to. And as soon as you turned in, there was signs along all of the stairs that explicitly stated that only men were allowed to go up. And like, Jane and I are pretty level-headed. Like, we're not immediately going to be like, well, what the fuck is this? But at the same time, Jane was like, what if I want to go up there, man? Like, what is this about? So she insisted that I go up and find out what the deal was. And as I was going up, I turned a corner and there was a little like placard thing that was basically like, for anyone who may be offended, this is to protect the privacy of men who otherwise may not feel like they're able to look at the things they want to look at if there's women around or if their significant other is around. So we have created this as a safe space for men who wish to look at the things that they would like, regardless of if they would be judged by it or judged for it by society writ large or the women in their lives. And I was like, I mean, fair enough, man. I respect it. You boys need their space. I get it. If there was a floor like that was like, only the women can go here too, I'd be all about it. Fair enough. Sometimes you just need your space. But it was wild. Just the type of thing that, like, I knew stuff like that existed in terms of NSFW shops. I didn't expect a shop like that had explicitly, this is for the boys and only for the boys. Because sometimes they get a little nervous. They get a little embarrassed. They get a little shy. They need a spot where they can just go explore their interests. So I was like, whoo! And there was some stuff up there too. Again, I don't think I can describe, but it was it was a lot. It was pretty awesome, I can't lie. Oh man. Let's see here. Let's see. The underground grocery stores feel so strange. Yep. Basement level 7, tanning parlor and soup. Always wanted to go to Japan. 2 kids now. Hope I can afford to go someday. Sounds fun. Dude, Random Zombie, the number of people that we saw, like the number of families that Jane and I saw, you need Western folk with 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids in tow who were clearly there on vacation. It's doable. Apparently, it's doable. And they didn't look like they were loaded or anything. Really, the big cost is the plane tickets. If you can afford the plane tickets, you're golden. Everything else there is so cheap, even accommodations, it's easy. Absolutely. Usually it's own floor, yep. Have someone working there who will stop people underage from entering. I mean, maybe that would have been the case, but I mean, look at me. The last time I got carded for something, it was at Colossal Con, and it was because I was in cosplay and had a wig on. And the guy asked to see my ID, and I just took the wig off, and I was bald, and he just waved me through. So I don't have to worry about that type of thing. People have been accusing me of being 40 since I was 18. So, like, I'm good in that regard. But, yeah, I imagine there probably would have been a little bit more of an issue if I didn't look the way I look. Not to say that I look ancient, but, you know. Only men, based. Poor Jane, though, Lamal. She was just happy to know. She was like, I don't care beyond that. I have the morbid curiosity to know what's being held from me. But as soon as I described it to her, it was exactly what she expected it to be. So, you know, not a huge deal. But, so yeah, that was Akihabara. And then, I mean, well, I hate to be this guy. Kyoto sucked balls. I'm just going to come right out and say it. Kyoto was awful. Jane and I hated Kyoto. It was truly terrible. It is by far the most densely packed place that is not built to be so densely packed that I've ever had the misfortune of being in. Kyoto, on its face, was cool. All the historical stuff, all the different cool streets and everything. It would have been a lot better if there were not, and I am not exaggerating here because I counted, at any given time, 42 double to triple decker buses worth of tourists wandering the same streets that we were trying to wander at any given time. And I understand there might be some hypocrisy there because we were also tourists. But there's a difference between Jane and I, who know how to navigate and be polite, and then these people who were tourists. Like, camera around their neck, blocking the streets, yelling and screaming and being Disney people. Those are the type of tourists that we were dealing with literally every time we tried to go out on the streets of Kyoto.
Arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Link!
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
Oh my god!
A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
Holy shit, my guy!
Warrior.
Oh my god!
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Congratulations to the 50 new folks who just got memberships from Link Jedi Master, and huge shout out to Link Jedi Master for gifting 50 fucking memberships, my guy. Oh my, all right, well, this is going to be going on for a little while, so what's my hotkey? I'm just going to go use the bathroom really quick, and then I'll welcome everyone once the notifications stop coming in. We'll be right back, because I got to refill my water anyway. Oh my god!
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
All right, how far through are we? Holy smokes, man.
A mighty sword arm
hey,
anchored
Blind
by
Coco
holy
got one.
purpose.
Let's go.
A zealous warrior.
Oh, man. Absolutely insane. Wow.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
That's Kaiazar. Let me see if I can find the name in here. How far through we are. It's just going to like double back and give Link a membership himself.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
So many.
A zealous warrior.
Okay, so there's Coco. Oh yeah, we have a fair bit to go through yet. We have a fair bit to go through. Okay. So I'll start organizing my thoughts about Kyoto. Okay.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
Kyoto.
A zealous
I'll start
warrior.
recording for later because I'm going to need it. Kyoto, man. Kyoto's beautiful.
A mighty sword arm anchored by
no doubt
holy
about
purpose. A zealous warrior.
I loved being in such a historic area. However,
a mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Any given street that you were on had the width to comfortably support one person. not talking about me being a big American. I'm talking about like one
anchored by holy
relatively
purpose.
smaller
A
Japanese
zealous
citizen.
warrior.
Okay? The streets are built to like comfortably have a couple of Volkswagens go past each other. And you got buses everywhere.
A mighty
Got whole
sword
swarms
arm
of people
anchored
walking
by
by.
holy purpose.
All of the restaurants
zealous
closed at
warrior.
like 5 p.m., which was insane. And when I say they closed at 5 p.m., that was their official close time. They stopped taking people at 4.
A mighty
Everything was
sword arm
mobbed.
anchored by holy
And not by
purpose.
Japanese people.
A zealous warrior.
Like, you'd be trying to walk down the stairs, and you'd have some dude in an A pose. I know you can't see my face. Grinning for the
mighty
camera as
sword
his
arm
gaggle of
anchored
like
by
15
holy
family members
purpose.
was taking a picture.
A
And
zealous
meanwhile, I was
warrior.
ready to grab him by the shoulders and throw him bodily down the stairs, all like 35 flights of stairs, lest he
A
I don't know,
mighty
go
sword
suffer
arm
the pit he
anchored
deserves
by
to be in.
holy purpose.
It sucked, man.
A zealous
It didn't help that
warrior.
it was raining most of the time too, but that was like half our trip, and it was really only a problem in Kyoto. Like, it was just such a shame. In fact,
A mighty sword
the
arm
only
anchored
time
by holy purpose.
that
A
we had
zealous
an
warrior.
incident of actual genuine rude behavior from a like
A
local
mighty
person.
sword arm anchored by
So,
holy purpose. A zealous
There was a
warrior.
gyudon place that we decided we wanted to eat at, and had a pretty lengthy wait. It was like probably 45 minutes to
A
an hour,
mighty sword arm anchored by holy
which is
purpose.
not terrible.
A zealous warrior.
The problem is that you're waiting out on the street, and it was raining, and again, the sidewalk had enough room for maybe 1.5 people.
A
And
mighty
you've got
sword
25 people
arm
waiting
anchored
outside
by
trying to get
holy
into this place.
purpose.
So
A
we're all
zealous
lined
warrior.
up in a neat, orderly row along the sidewalk. Apparently, the lady that lives next to the gyudon place took great offense to
mighty
this,
sword arm
as this like
anchored by holy
85-year-old,
A zealous
wizened, wrinkled, wretched old gremlin of a woman comes wandering out of her house and starts screaming in
A mighty
English,
sword
"This
arm
is
anchored
my
by
house!
holy purpose.
This is my
zealous
house!"
warrior.
I'm just like waving her hand in people's faces. We're like, "Whoa, lady, okay, it's your house. No one's messing with it. We're on the sidewalk."
A mighty
And she's
sword
like
arm
screaming at
anchored
people.
by holy purpose.
She goes over to the restaurant,
A
shoves
zealous
her way through the
warrior.
crowd, goes in and starts yelling at the guys who work in the restaurant, and drags them out. And she keeps going, "This is my house. You are in
A
front of
mighty
my
sword
house."
arm anchored
And the
by
one chick
holy
behind
purpose.
us, who is also Japanese,
A
says
zealous
in English,
warrior.
she's like, "We know. We're not touching it. Like, we're not doing anything to it." But apparently, there being a line of people on the
mighty
sidewalk in
sword
front of her
arm
house,
anchored by
not messing
holy
with her house
purpose.
and not on her property,
A
just in
zealous
front of her
warrior.
house, sent this lady into a fit of rage. And she just went off. So, and because this is the way that Japan
A mighty
is,
sword arm
wanting to
anchored
appease
by
her and be
holy
polite and
purpose.
everything, the
A
employees
zealous
from the
warrior.
restaurant came out and had everyone come over and bunch up in this knot of people in front of the store. And
A
so now
mighty
we're like
sword
pressed
arm
in.
anchored
Instead of
by
being in a
holy
nice,
purpose.
orderly
A
line,
zealous warrior.
we're now clustered together like sardines in a can, trying to shield ourselves from the rain and waiting for another like 30 minutes to be able to
A
get into
mighty
this
sword
restaurant.
arm
Also, that
anchored
this
by
lady
holy
who's not
purpose.
outside,
A
she's not
zealous
doing
warrior.
anything outside. She doesn't have a yard. It's just her window and then the sidewalk. Doesn't have people standing in front of her
A
house.
mighty
It was
sword arm
absolutely
anchored by
nuts.
holy purpose.
It was
A
insane.
zealous warrior.
And that sucked. And then on top of that, the food sucked in the gyudon place too, even though it was like a 4.8 stars. It was pretty awful.
A mighty sword arm anchored
Like, everything
by
was either
holy
sold out
purpose.
or the stuff that we got was
zealous
just
warrior.
low quality. So that was not a great experience. We couldn't find anywhere to eat pretty much at all in the time
mighty
that we were in
sword arm
Kyoto. It
anchored
just
by
was not a
holy
great
purpose.
experience at all.
A zealous warrior. A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
Mm-hmm.
A zealous warrior.
Yeah, the people eat the convenience store stuff because it is just so much more convenient. Like, you're actually able to go
A
in and
mighty
get
sword
food.
arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous warrior.
Felt much more empty when I was there, except for the major tourist areas like Ginza that was packed. Yeah,
A
so
mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose. A zealous
this is one of the
warrior.
points of contention that Jane and I were in. because we'd heard that Kyoto's gotten really bad in the last couple of years in terms of tourism. Like a lot of Chinese people, a lot of Indian people, a lot of Western people. Primarily the former two. There was so many Chinese tourists. I don't know why, what specifically. I mean, I know Kyoto's a very historical area, but it was just packed, just insanely packed. And we'd heard that. And we'd heard that there had been issues with over-tourism in Kyoto.
A mighty sword arm anchored by holy purpose.
We
Zealous warrior.
We debated going, but we wanted to see it for ourselves. But right now, with the amount of over-tourism, I would not recommend it. I would not recommend it at all. Our best experience was going to a little beef udon place that was across the street from our hotel. That was very, like, humble, shall we say, in its presentation. Like, you know, if you go to like a local Chinese restaurant in America, like just, you know, it's in your local strip mall or whatever, and you've got those exact type of chair and the exact type of table, you know, the one with like the brown metal and it's like got the cushion and everything. They all look exactly the same. They have the exact same menus, but then it's some of the finest food you've eaten anywhere in your area. It was like that, except it was an udon place. The owner was so cool. He was such a chill guy. Hung out, chatted with us, comfortable atmosphere, delicious food. It was like the best experience that we had. Then we went to all these like highly rated, high-end places, and it sucked. And it was so overcrowded. It was terrible. So, yeah, it was an unfortunate experience. It was. So annoying, yeah, definitely. A lot of foreign tourists. What spots did you visit in Kyoto? I mean, the main areas, pretty much. We went up to the major temples and the different shrines and everything. I have a very hard time with the names. There was the one like palace area that's like hanging off the cliff. That's Kyoto, right? Not Osaka? I don't think it's Osaka. I think it's Kyoto. Yeah, definitely Kyoto. Definitely Kyoto. It's like, yeah, hanging off of the cliff. That's Kyoto. We went there. There was a whole area behind it walking through the forest that we went to. In so doing, I smashed my head off of a metal girder so bad that I had an egg on my head that went from here to here that is still tender now, even though it's gone down. You know when you hit your hard and all you can see is static? That's how hard I hit my head walking through there. It was really bad. I don't know how I didn't break the skin. Yeah, I was ducking through and I was trying because it was starting to rain. I had my umbrella out, but the little doorway that we were walking through to get to this one wooded path didn't have room for my umbrella to get through. So like I was trying to get my umbrella to close as I was walking through, but because the umbrella was open, I couldn't see how low the bar was. So I had my head down working on the umbrella and I banged like the whole fence shook. Other people who were like 20, 30 feet in front of us turned around and looked because it was such a loud bang. Like I just like doubled over. It was like holding my head for a few seconds while I tried to regain my senses. It hurt so bad. The whole rest of the trip, I had this huge lump on my head that was so tender. It sucked. Yeah. Kiyomizu-dera. Yep. So we went there. That whole historic district there. We went from Kyoto. It's not Asakusa. Oh, God. It's where I ate my favorite curry of the trip. Let me pull it up really quick on my phone because I tweeted about it. Let me just go to my profile really quick here. We day tripped to an area from Kyoto. That was amazing. Like low tourist density, beautiful historic area, quiet, peaceful, lots of nature. There was one of the mountains where you could climb and like actually hang out with the monkeys. Like they'd come within like touching distance of you, and you could take pictures of them and everything. It was so cool. It was phenomenal. So that was great. That was really, really nice. If I can find the name of the damn place. Let's see here. Arashiyama. That was it. Yep. Yeah, Arashiyama was amazing. So, and I count that as part of Kyoto because it was a short, like, 40-minute train ride to Arashiyama. Arashiyama was amazing. Like, we wish that we had stayed in Arashiyama because it was quiet. Again, the food was phenomenal. Beautiful area. And then day trip to Kyoto. That would have been way better. Absolutely. Nice Temple was easily the most packed place on my trip. Yeah, and it was even worse now that the tourism has gotten so much worse. The notifications finally stopped. They did, yes. We're going to go and welcome all of those people in just a second here. Yeah, Arashiyama. So, okay, let's go through here. We have Karnak Ketrel, Elbeni, Syrian, Juan Longoria, Koloasic. Yes, Koloasic. Zaith Leon, Blueberry X, Camel Deschens, Skylier, Kyle, Draco Frostbite. I almost said Drake Frostbite. Magura Arcade Brunistud, Kenneth, Scott Campbell, Baka Nikajaga, as always, classic. Zero, Blind Coco Studios, Kaiazar, Mizutsune Bubble Dragon. Nice. That's a classic. Hentalization. Hentalization. Not hentalization. Hentalization. Yes. Stefan Zees Rudin, Luis Felipe Azevedo Pasacol. Let me rephrase that. Luis Felipe Azevedo Pascual. Probably closer. Apologies. Phoenix 1992. Rescue Squad Culp. Good to see you. Aulia Pramadani. Keith Arctic Wind 07. Al Addict. Nothing is Real. Catharsis TF2. Titanfall 2 or Team Fortress 2. Big difference there. Ludmilla, Ryrie, DC Fat Cat, Wraith, Izzy, Jorge Martins, Demiurgent Care. That's fun. Entar, Gabriel Arroyo Alegria, sorry. Any Road, Keith Lavorne, Chandra Siusana, Siaoyana, probably. Pete Punzalin, Team Fiasco, Anthony Davidson, Defron Dominique, James Gordon, and Alex Drake. And that's everyone. Woo! Big Fitty. Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoy your memberships. Link, holy dear Lord. Thank you so much for the generosity, sir. That is insanely massive of you. Like, legitimately, that's going to help with the move significantly. Put it that way. And I hope that you all enjoy your beans and your access to community posts and all that type of good stuff. Welcome. Visited the Arashiyama Bamboo Forest. It was raining, so it wasn't too busy. Yep. We did that as well. It was very, very nice. There was a lot of great stuff in Arashiyama. That was a super nice area. We will probably be staying in Arashiyama when we go there next, like when we go to Japan next. Highly recommend it for sure. From Kyoto, we went to Osaka. Osaka was pretty cool. There was a lot to see there, but we didn't do too much in the city itself. We basically did a lot of day tripping, and then while we were in Osaka, we went to Hiroshima, so that was a whole day unto itself. So we wanted to do some nightlife stuff in Osaka. We didn't really get the chance, unfortunately. That was at the point where Jane started not feeling super great, so we took a night to just kind of chill. And then the night after that, we were going to be traveling to Hiroshima, so we didn't want to be too wiped out. But even so, just the overall infrastructure of Osaka was extremely impressive. Like, talk about a mega city. Like, the Osaka station that we were staying in, because that was where we had the hotel, on street signs was literally described as Osaka Station City. Not the city of Osaka. The station itself was described on signage as a city, and that is 100% correct. Just the density of the place was nuts. absolutely huge. Again, there was a 8-floor hotel in the top of this place with 2 separate floors of restaurants attached to it. That's where you, again, had a Nintendo Center, a Pokemon Center, a One Piece store, a Capcom store, an art gallery, and a couple of other things for different model kits and stuff. A bunch of other high-end shopping. All these different grocery, bakery, liquor, sweet stores in the basement itself. And then the actual train station, that was another like 7 layers of shopping and food and convenience, and the actual train station itself and the bus station and all this different stuff. You could literally live in that one building for your entire life and have, well, some issues just in terms of like not getting world experience, but in terms of necessities, done, sold. Easy. No problems whatsoever. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. So even though we didn't really see much of Osaka City, we did still get a pretty good experience there. And then traveling to Hiroshima was amazing, which we'll talk about that next. Only did a day trip to Osaka. Whew, I don't know how you were able to pull that off. So, Hiroshima. This is the part of the trip that I was most looking forward to, and it did not disappoint. Very fittingly, it was raining the entire time, drizzling. It was very moody, very atmospheric, and actually getting to Hiroshima and seeing the A-bomb dome and learning about the overall blast radius of the bomb and everything. I know a lot about that stuff because I've always been fascinated by it. There's a reason that I love the Fallout series. I love history surrounding the involvement of Japan in World War II and their interactions with the U.S., all that type of stuff. Being there, though, a whole different story. Absolutely a whole different story. Seeing the A-bomb dome and knowing that that is about as close as you could get to the epicenter of the blast. And then looking around you, and other than that one building that's been preserved, and then the various memorials around it in the Peace Memorial Park, and just seeing all of these normal buildings, all of this normal infrastructure, again, restaurants, stores, apartments, various different like office buildings, things like that. You would never know. And the fact that it was only 80 some odd years ago is insane. We saw a very interesting map that showed even the Hiroshima station that we came in at off the train. That was like a 15-minute bus ride away from the A-bomb dome, from the epicenter of the blast, was in the blast radius. And knowing that the entire city in that area was part of that blast and was pretty much leveled was jarring. To really be able to see a representation of that damage. Because you guys have probably seen those types of maps before where it's like, oh, if the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima landed on your city, how widespread would be the damage, right? And it gives you an idea. But traveling from the outside edge all the way in and seeing everything that you're traveling past on that one narrow slice inwards towards the epicenter, and then extrapolating out how much just life is in that area, and knowing that 80 years ago it was just gone, is impactful in exactly the way that I expected it to be, which is nice. I'm glad that it is set up in a way that imparts the level of weight that it should, given what happened there. We spent the whole day there. It was very interesting because there was actually, like, I don't know if it was just like nationwide high schoolers visit Hiroshima Day, but there had to have been at least 25 different groups of high schoolers with their entire class, like dressed all in formal wear and everything, who were getting toured around the whole area and shown all of the sites and all the memorials and everything. So that was very interesting to see a new generation of kids who are probably half my age, seeing what is obviously such a massive part of their history from the perspective of the people who 80 years ago were on the opposite side of that event, was very, very interesting. Especially given how like excited they were and how kind of laissez-faire they were about it, which again, they're like 15, 16-year-olds. That's typically how you tend to be in that type of situation, but it was very interesting to see. We saw a lot of very interesting memorials. The two most impactful ones to me were there was a memorial for the not combatants. I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing that was used. Basically, the children who had been mobilized to aid with the war effort who were in the city at the time of the bombing. So if you didn't know, during those kind of waning days of the war, Japan was in such dire straits that they had school children that they were taking out of class and using for either like office work, kind of facilitation roles, like logistical stuff in offices and managing paperwork and calls and that type of thing, or as laborers to like tear down destroyed buildings, build new ones, dig out fire lanes, things like that. And there was, I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right. I think it was something along the lines of around 18,000 school children who were in the city at the time of the bombing. And I think it was around 7,000 or 8,000 of those died in the bombing or as a result of the after effects. And it was just such an incredibly somber monument. Like, I didn't get overly choked up in the way that I expected to, seeing the A-bomb dome and hearing about it and everything. But that monument, talking about that loss of life. And it was very much stated in a way of like, children who were pressed into service for a cause that they knew very little about and that they had no bearing on, and were taken away from their education and the opportunities that they had in life, and many of whom lost their lives as a result. To say nothing of the impact that everything had on the rest of them to begin with, how big of a deal that was. That was extremely impactful. The other monument that we saw was a funerary mound where they took all the ashes of everyone that they were able to find after the fact, as well as any bodies that they found, and they cremated them there, and those are all buried in under this funerary mound. That was also incredibly impactful because it's such a small spot. Like, we almost didn't see it, and we just happened to stumble across it. It's such a small area. It's like a hillock. You would almost never know, except for the fact that it's obviously man-made, and then you see the plaque. So it was very, very impactful. You know, we went to the museum, we went through that whole display, saw everything about all the personal effects of different people, heard their stories. And then one of the more interesting things was we actually learned about the Akatsuki Brigade, which was a brigade of child soldiers. Some of this is probably going to be demonetized, but whatever. This stream isn't impactful in that way anyway, in terms of ad rev. It was a corps of child soldiers who were supposed to be, I can't say this word on YouTube, I know that for a fact. So, you know, the planes that hit Pearl Harbor, you know, in a very selfless way, shall we say. It was that, except like 13, 14-year-olds on boats that were meant to sink American warships by sneaking up to them. There was this group, this brigade of kids who were being trained for that. And then the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. And they were the only standing military force close enough to provide immediate aid. So they went from being these kids with this very self-destructive mission to being the first responders in Hiroshima a couple hours after the bomb dropped. And it was just very interesting because while a little bit older now, there was a lot of interview footage with the men who served in that brigade who were talking about everything that they experienced there and how horrifying it was and what they were able to do to try to help people and the after effects that they suffered from the radiation and just from other like mental problems and all that type of stuff. it was something that Jane and I were not expecting to run across. Neither of us had ever heard of that before. But the stark impact of a group of kids who were meant for such a destructive task being the first ones on the scene to aid people who had suffered so much more destructive of an event. There was a certain very interesting juxtaposition there. And the fact that they had actual interviews with those men who could talk about their experiences was fascinating. And I'm glad that we got to see it. Of all the things that we saw there, other than the children's memorial for the kids who were pressed into service, that's the thing that I'm happiest that we saw there. Because that was completely new to me. And it hit really hard. Really, really hard. That was the majority of Hiroshima. You know, we saw pretty much all the sites there in terms of the actual memorial sites and things like that. And then we headed home. I'm very glad that we got to see it. If you ever have the chance to go to Japan and you're at all interested in extremely important historical events and just the overall history of humanity, to say nothing of the nation that you're currently taking a trip through, I highly recommend going to see it. Definitely. It was very incredible. Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, Nagasaki. Yes, Nagasaki is somewhere that we'll be going on the next trip through for sure. Tom had the opportunity to be the biggest asshole ever to those kids and didn't take it. I would never in a million years. Absolutely not. Yeah, Johnny Somali. Oh God. Yeah, no, never. Never in a million years. I have way too much respect for people in history to do that. My God. Really want to see it someday? Yeah, definitely. Definitely recommend. After Hiroshima, though, we saw Osaka Castle and everything, actually. I should mention that as well. We learned about the history of Hideyoshi, which was extremely interesting because, funnily enough, I first knew his name from playing Pokemon Conquest, of all things, where he's one of the warlords that you can get. I knew he was an important historical figure, but I didn't realize how important. That man is like the Napoleon of Japan. Absolutely incredible life story. And being able to actually walk through the interior of Osaka Castle and seeing all these different displays of his life and actual armor, like proper plated ceramics and metal samurai armor that was used during the period that people fought and died in, and just learning about that whole huge section of Japanese history, the way that the castle was destroyed and rebuilt, taken over by rival clans, was extremely interesting. And then the fact that you can go up to the top of the castle and then look out over the entire city of Osaka was also so cool. Very, very awesome. We have some good pictures and footage of that I'll show you guys when I eventually get the video put together, but that was also really cool. Okay. Now, back to Tokyo. We didn't have too much time. We stayed in Akasaka in the Hena Hotel Akasaka, where the front desk was manned by automatons, which was very weird and interesting and kind of creepy. But the majority of our time there, we spent just recovering. And then we spent a lot of that time traveling around the overall Tokyo area and doing last minute sightseeing and shopping. So we did a whole bunch of that. That was super cool. And then the last night that we were there, lugging all of our stuff, we got the chance to go to abroad in Japan, Chris Abroad's bar that him and his fiance opened, Lost Bar in Shibuya. And that was honestly pretty cool. It was pretty awesome. It was a long wait to get in, but once we were able to go in, it was a very nice atmosphere. The drinks and the food were phenomenal. The staff was really cool. And just seeing, like, having all these different pictures and everything of those guys and like different things that Jane and I have seen from watching all the videos to prep for the trip was super cool. It was a lot of fun. I know it's a very, like, of all the places you could go in Japan, like, you went there type of thing. But for us, it was impactful because we watched so many of those videos to learn what we needed to do and how to handle the trip. So it was a nice little way to kind of cap off the whole experience, right? A little celebration of being like, hey, this place and the people who run it are part of the reason that we were able to make this trip so successful. So You went to Lost, oh snap. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. It was pretty awesome. It was pretty great. Food was phenomenal. You know, like bar snacky type stuff, but still. Drinks were really good. Atmosphere was really cool. The staff was super chill. You know, even though we had to wait like an hour and a half to get in, it was pretty cool. Went there on your birthday. The castle was awesome. Yeah, for sure. What other cool places in Tokyo did you go to? I mean, we went all over the place. Shibuya was a little bit hit or miss. There was a ASMR head spa that Jane went to in I'm still not sure if it was actually in Shibuya or if it was in Fashion District. It's not Akihabara. I can never remember the name. It's like very high end. Someone in chat will know it. Someone, come on, help me out, chat. It's next. It's in Shibuya, basically. Harajuku. Thank you. I think it was more in Harajuku. So Jane went there. It was like a 3-hour appointment that she was there. So I just basically kind of wandered around Harajuku, and I'm not gonna lie, it kind of sucked. I was expecting that I'd find like a cool bar or something that I could go hang out at, get some drinks, chat with people. But the area that it was in was all like medical places, like dentists and like medical offices, office buildings. Like there was a Starbucks, a couple of convenience stores. And then when I walked down onto like the proper Harajuku street where all the high-end shopping was, it was way too rich for my blood. Like I immediately felt like a country bumpkin who was way out of his element. People there were way too attractive and way too well dressed. Everything was way too expensive. I could not browse anywhere there. No way. I felt way out of my element, so I bailed as soon as possible. I did find a cool little ramen place that I sat down at. Got some ramen that was very good. Actually chatted with a couple of guys from Colorado, I want to say it was. Western guys. So chatted with them for a little bit. But other than that, I just kind of wandered around in the rain for like 2.5 hours. And just had really nothing to do while I waited for Jane to be done with her appointment. So it was a little disappointing. I didn't think I would need a plan to like find a place. I just figured there'd be something, but there was nothing. And then the places that were there were closed because of the time of night that it was. So, yeah, Harajuku does kind of suck for sure. If you're not looking for high-end shopping stuff, like expensive shopping stuff, wasn't great. Coincidentally, another gamer/streamer I enjoy, Deegis, also just returned from a Japan trip. It's on my bucket list too. Definitely recommend, dude. Definitely recommend. Cost to get there in terms of the flight is definitely the biggest barrier to entry, but if you can manage that, you're pretty much golden. Absolutely. And that's coming from a guy that had to really grind to put the funds together for the trip. But yeah, so that's like the general overview of the Japan trip. I have more details that I'll get into and everything when I put the proper video together with all the footage and everything. But it was definitely a great experience. Even the flights, like it was long flights, man. We flew up from Philly to Montreal, which was about an 1.5-hour flight. And then to Japan, it was like 13 hours. And then back, it was like 11. Long flight. But even though, you know, we flew economy and it was a little cramped, 2 full meals, dinner and breakfast, snack in between, complimentary coffee, wine, soda, juice, whiskey, beer, like whatever you could want in that regard. They had a ton of different, like when I say like, you know, you get like in-flight movies, like, oh, we get like a movie or maybe like 5 different things. Nah, man. They had Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, like all sorts of different stuff. All TV shows, movies, classic and current, a ton of different stuff that you could check out. They handed out free like earbuds for everybody, so you could just plug right in. Even if you didn't have anything on you, you could listen without anything bothering you. The food itself was actually pretty decent. The staff was super helpful. All things considered, it was a pretty damn comfortable flight both ways, I gotta say. It was not too bad. It was not too bad at all. Even Jane's fear of flying was not too bad. The takeoffs and landings were pretty smooth. We didn't hit too much turbulence. And we got to fly over the Arctic Circle on the way there, which was, I mean, it was, I expected it to be cooler, but because of the altitude we were at, it was all clouds, so we couldn't really see anything. But just the knowledge that we were flying over like the northern polar ice cap was pretty wild. It was pretty damn cool, I gotta say. How are the hotels themselves? Nice. Very nice. Small, but that's anything like that in Japan. But they were comfortable. Great service. One was not super comfortable. This was also part of the reason that Kyoto sucked. But generally, all things considered, very comfortable. A lot of nice accommodations. Good location for trying to get anywhere. The place we stayed in Kyoto was very nice in terms of location and accommodations. The staff was very helpful, very kind. It had more space than a lot of the other hotel rooms. But the mattress was a rock. The topper that they had on it was not helpful. And they wouldn't give us a second topper, even though it said that if you, like, they had signage in every room that said if you needed to make the bed softer, they would give you a second mattress topper, or if you needed to make it firmer, they could take out the topper that they already had on it. They wouldn't give it to us. So we did not sleep very well the entire time we were in Kyoto either. Jane and I woke up probably like once an hour each. It was not comfortable. So that definitely sucked. But other than that, though, all the accommodations were pretty dang nice. Not bad at all. We stayed in Amachiya for one night. Wasn't really worth it. If we'd been there for multiple nights, it would have been more worth it. But for the short amount of time we were there, it kind of was like, eh. But happy you're back now, Tom. Biggest challenge is the body clock. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Good to see you, Daniel. Absolutely. You were in Montreal. We could have hung out between your connecting flights. True. We had a very short connection going to Japan. On the way back, it was longer, but we also weren't allowed to leave the terminal. So I still don't know how well that would have worked. Otherwise, I probably would have hit up Canada as well. But it would have been cool, though. It would have been very cool. Get really nauseous on planes. That's the worst part for me. That's fair. Yeah. I expected the planes to be worse. Not for me. I'm pretty okay with planes. I expected it to be worse for Jane, but she was all right, too. So that was good. Probably ran out. So that was the thing. They said, you already have one, so we can't give you one. And we were like, it's not what your signs say. If you're just out, that's fine. But tell us that. Jane understands enough Japanese that you can get that across. But they were just like, no, we just can't. You already have one. Like, well, then why do you have the signs? So I don't know. That was annoying. But another YouTuber also went to Japan at the beginning of the month. A lot of us, huh? Interesting. I think there was a lot of people there, for sure. But yes, that's the general gist. Like I said, I'll get into more details about the whole thing and be able to show off like footage and pictures and all that type of stuff. Show some of the merch that we got when I do the video for it. But it was an absolutely phenomenal trip. I desperately needed it, for sure. So did Jane. We had a complete blast. We can't wait to go back and check out all the things that we missed. Like, there was stuff like... because Jane wasn't feeling well and she was so tired, we never actually got down to, was it Dotonbori Street in Kyoto? Or in Osaka, which is like one of the reasons to go to Osaka. And I desperately wanted to go to it and get food and see the lights and everything, but she was not up to it. So we didn't get to do that. There was a bunch of other places that we wanted to go. And then, yeah, like going to Nagasaki, other areas in Japan. We wanted to like go out into the country a bit more, stay in like a proper onsen. Like, there's a ton of stuff. Jane never even got sushi. Like, we were just so busy the whole time that there's basic things we just never got the chance to do. So we're definitely going to be hitting stuff like that back up. Oh, yeah, really quick. When we were in Osaka, we went to Odaiba and we saw like the transforming Gundam, which was amazing. It was like one of the highlights of the trip for me. Got a shit ton of merch. So much cool Gundam stuff. I got a whole bunch of Gunpla and a shirt and like a cutting map that's themed around Char and all this different, like, it was so cool. That was amazing. I can't wait to post the footage for that as well. It's on the thumbnail for this video. So yeah, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. But yeah, absolutely phenomenal trip. We can't wait to go back. Even though I'm happy to be back home in our space, doing stuff on YouTube, I miss it dearly. Just the overall convenience, the politeness of the people, how clean everything is, how affordable everything is. It's a magical place, just for how well run it is. And I can only hope that someday North American culture rises to meet it in some form or fashion. It's a pipe dream, but maybe we'll get lucky. Loved hearing about the whole trip. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for letting me share, guys. I went a little bit longer than I expected to, but that's fine. It was kind of a huge deal, so what can I say? And now you get why everyone who ever goes wants to go back as soon as they get home. Yep. Did you go to the Gundam store there? Yep. Yeah, that's where I got a whole bunch of merch and different stuff like that. So I wore my really sick Unicorn Gundam shirt when I went to my Warhammer game yesterday. Otherwise, I would show you guys that. But there was a ton of cool stuff there, for sure. We're fucked all. Yeah, probably. Okay. So, with the Japan discussion done, time to move on to the second half of things here. So let me drink some water, because God, my throat. And I missed you guys too, Daniel. Absolutely. I definitely did miss streaming. I'm glad to get back to it. I'm excited to do more gaming streams again, get through some of this backlog of stuff we've got built up. I've missed so much sort of Convallaria stuff alone. Like, holy. But yeah, so now that we're done here, speaking of which, we're going to be going into the second part of what's going on here today. And that is going to be a fun time. So let me just do a little bit of this really quick here. Switch some scenes. Waha! There we are. I mentioned we're going to be doing a tier list live today. And this is it. Y'all might be wondering why in the last couple of days I've been polling people in the community page of my YouTube channel about games that could potentially fall under the turn-based strategy or at least strategy RPG genre. And this is why. Today, we are going to be ranking in a tier list every turn-based strategy RPG that I have ever played. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Had to give a little bit of a YouTube intro there. So, how this is going to be working, and if you're watching the video right now, well, welcome. Good to have y'all, video viewers. I'm glad to be back from the Japan trip. If you're at all interested in learning about said trip, I'm going to be putting out a vlog sometime in the near future, and you can find the VOD for this stream. I'll have it linked in the description, so you can go and see the first couple of hours that are all basically talking about current events in my life and how the Japan trip was. So you can go and check that out. But now that I'm back, I've been kind of throwing this idea around in my head where I want to put on a list every turn-based strategy RPG that I've ever played, and I think I've got them all on here. If I forgot any, my apologies. We'll have to do a revised one at some point as I play new ones and as I potentially remember any ones that I've missed, but I tried to be really thorough here. I think I've got them all. And I think this is going to be a very interesting listing. Again, I was talking recently in the community tab about different games that I may or may not, we'll talk about it, view as strategy RPGs, getting the pulse of people in my community about whether they agree, disagree, if they think they are, if they think they're not, why they think they are or are not. And the responses have been so interesting, and there's been such an enthusiastic discussion around it that even after this stream and this video, depending on which one you're watching, I think I'm going to keep putting the questions out there for a little while. And I'm probably going to do a video specifically talking about what makes a strategy RPG, or maybe what makes a strategy RPG versus a turn-based strategy RPG. We'll see. Just because there's been so much interesting discussion. People have had a lot of very interesting things to say that have, in some ways, agreed with my own opinions. In other ways, very much disagreed. But everyone's had pretty good reasonings for why they've said what they said. So I kind of want to take the chance to talk about that. Now, that said, as of time of recording this, the two games that I've quizzed y'all about have been Baldur's Gate 3 and then Darkest Dungeon 1 and 2. And you'll note, as you look through some of these, those are all on this list. Because personally, I think that they do, in a way, qualify as strategy RPGs. Even if the overall genre of them maybe falls under a different category, I think the way they go about their combat and overall gameplay definitely encompasses the genre. And I think it's part of the reason that turn-based strategy RPG stuff has been seeing a little bit of a resurgence, because it's not been relegated to its own genre like it has been for a long time. It's seeping into other very mainstream titles in a way that I think is kind of gonna help the genre as a whole. So I want to talk about that. You'll see a trimmed down version of this video and this stream if you're watching the video version, because I imagine there's going to be chat interaction and things like that. I'll keep some of it in if it's relevant, but if there's just kind of aimless chatter, things like that, that'll be trimmed down because I want to try and keep this fairly compact. Of course, I do welcome any and all feedback and comments in the description, or in the comments, I should say. If you have any particular thoughts about where anything is placed, or if you would maybe change something, add different games to the list. If you would, where would you put them? That type of fun stuff. For now, I think we're going to go ahead and get into it. Yes, here we go. I see the comments rolling in already. You played Pit People? I did. Final Fantasy Tactics tier, FFT, Fire Emblem Engage. Yes, so you'll notice here we have a few different tiers, some of which are a little unorthodox. We have the Final Fantasy Tactics tier, which we will have more things than just FFT there, but it's kind of the cream of the crop. And then at the very bottom, we have the Aegis Eclipse Generation of Chaos tier, which I kind of felt like I had to do, seeing as how I did a video talking about how that game is the single worst turn-based strategy RPG I've ever played. From there, we have our normal A, B, C, and D. Final Fantasy Tactics tier took over the S tier. And then a section of couldn't finish where I wouldn't say it is necessarily a terrible game. That would fall down into the Aegis Eclipse tier. But maybe a game that just wasn't quite compelling enough or was a little too annoying or something along those lines that I personally couldn't finish it, but I wouldn't outright decry it as a terrible game. It might resonate with other people, that kind of thing. So those are the tiers that we're going to be working with. We have a number of titles here, so we're going to get moving. Now, some of these games I have not yet finished, not because I can't finish them, but just because I haven't had the time. Things like Disgaea, where's my cursor here? Disgaea falls under that list. Last Spell, same, different stuff like that. I intend to finish those games. There's nothing wrong with them. I just haven't had the time, so we're going to be ranking them in a way that I feel is appropriate for what they bring to the table without necessarily being like, oh, I can't finish them. They belong down here in Aegis Eclipse, whatever. But yeah, I've not finished all of these titles. Keep that in mind. Distinction between strategy RPG, tactics game, puzzle, etc. is sometimes muddy. It is. Note as well, there are some games like Blind Coco's own Gales of Nayeli that I've only played demos of, so I don't have them on this list as it stands. In future iterations of those lists, then we will have that type of game on here too. Games that are maybe in early access, but otherwise a full-fledged title, like Together in Battle, the brainchild of Sinister Design, who's also here in the chat, are going to be on here because I feel like I've put in enough time with it to be able to judge it semi-fairly. When you think about it, Xenoblade Chronicles is kind of a... Xenogears would be on here, but I've not played it, so close. Most Final Fantasy games can fall into strategy due to the combat mechanics they have, but I would not classify them as strategy games. I wouldn't either. Those are definitely just classic JRPG, I would say. So we get in Tactics on here. I haven't played it. I have not played it, unfortunately. Okay, let's begin. First of all, I have these two up front because, of course, we've got two entire tiers dedicated to them. Final Fantasy Tactics. It's going in the Final Fantasy Tactics tier. This should not be a surprise to anybody. It is my favorite game of all time, and I do personally believe it is still the single greatest turn-based strategy RPG of all time. Period. No notes, no argument, no discussion. It just is. You could maybe make the argument that other games do certain mechanics better, are better graphically, have better quality of life features, are more refined. But I think the overall package of FFT is just too high quality to not have it be what the cream of the crop S tier bar is resting at. So that's where it's going to be. Aegis Eclipse Generation of Chaos, on the other hand, is all the way at the bottom. We're going to scroll this up a little bit so we can actually see these tiers properly. Aegis Eclipse Generation of Chaos, as I discussed in my video discussing why it is the single worst strategy RPG I've ever played, does not meet that same standard of having all of its disparate parts come together to make an incredibly complete package. Where Final Fantasy Tactics has its problems and has things that could be refined, made better, to make an overall more polished experience while still retaining everything that is good that it did. Aegis Eclipse has glimmers of greatness in it that are just bogged down by way too much trash. And without going back to the drawing board and redesigning the game from the ground up and re-recording voice lines and sound effects and doing new art and doing new mechanical design completely distinct from what already exists, it's never going to reach that overall complete package landmark. It's going to be at the bottom. I don't know that there will be anything else that's at the absolute bottom with it. But just as there must be a pinnacle, there must be a floor. And Aegis Eclipse Generation of Chaos is that floor. What did Aegis Eclipse do, lol? Oh boy, yeah, caffeine. That's actually one of the most popular videos on the channel now. You got to go check it out. There's a lot to discuss with this game, man. Absolutely. An outrage? I know. Check out some of the FF Tactics mods out there. I do need to. Once we get a good playthrough of Tactics in on the channel, then I'll probably start checking out mods. But make a remaster. I really hope they add the quotes for spells back in. That would be nice. Yeah, I agree with that. Aegis Eclipse burned our crops, poisoned our water supply, and delivered a plague onto our houses. Honestly, yes. When considering the fact that I could have been playing Joan of Arc over that all this time, yeah. Y'all can sign it to that. Okay, now continuing on, now that we've got the pinnacle and the floor set up, we can discuss everything else here. As needed, I will move my cam around if we wind up blocking anything. And by all means, feel free to discuss. Let me actually move my cam a little bit. No, come on. Come on. Give me my cam. Are you going to just go through every single... Thank you. Just want to drag this down a little bit so it's not like merging as much with the top. There we go. Okay. We're going to go through everything that we have here now, starting off with Baldur's Gate 3. Now, obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the best games ever made. Bar none. From an objective standpoint, it is better than Final Fantasy Tactics. I will not dispute that. However, while I do believe that functionally it serves as an example of a turn-based strategy RPG, even though it's not grid-based, even though obviously it's in the overall umbrella of CRPGs, I do still think it counts. And in that vein, it's not as fleshed out as other strategy RPGs. There's not as much depth, even though there's a lot of things that you can do and there's a lot of different mechanics at play. It doesn't have the density that other strategy RPGs have. That said, what it does have is immaculate. All the different animations, all the different combinations of different spells, abilities, classes, all that type of fun stuff, the way you can level, the way you can build out your unique characters, the way you can approach different combat scenarios, it does have a ton going for it. So I think it very solidly lands in A tier. I really can't argue it being anywhere else. Ignoring the CRPG aspects of it, of running around, managing inventories, exploring an open world, solving puzzles, etc., etc., etc. The gameplay itself and the different mechanics at play that facilitate it are still phenomenal. And I love it for that. I think it's extremely strong in that regard. PG3 is terrific, but I'm one of the people who got overwhelmed in Act 3 and still need to go back and finish it. That's fair. That's fair. There's a lot going on when you get to Act 3. All right, Crimson Tactics. I know this is a very contentious one. I still maintain that it is a very solid game, and that's what we're going to be judging it based on. I think Crimson Tactics is a very solid middle-of-the-road B tier. There's a lot of things that I would like to see changed about it that are never going to, unfortunately. I love the way that it actually tries to do things with mounts, that it had interesting things going on with what is an otherwise very Final Fantasy Tactics grid-based system with like diagonal attacks, different types of status effects, things like that. I've enjoyed every second that I've played with Crimson Tactics, and I desperately need to go back and finish playing what's there. There's just some things that they tried to do, and I love the presence of those things. Like, again, I always go back to the mounted system. that needed to just be fleshed out more to bump it up higher. That said, I do think for any sort of turn-based strategy enthusiasts out there, it's absolutely worth going and picking up. It's got compelling enough characters. It's got a compelling enough story. I like the animations. I like the designs. And I definitely like the mechanical design. There's a lot of good there, and it makes it a very solid middle-of-the-road game. Now, Dark Deity, to me, is absolutely A tier. And yes, of course, there's going to be a huge world of difference between Dark Deity and Baldur's Gate, but we're riding off of vibes right now, all right? And I personally think that Dark Deity got way more hate than it deserved. It was buggy when it first came out, sure. I know that because I was in the trenches helping the devs solve bugs by discovering them and sending them footage when the game first dropped. But the overall core of an indie Fire Emblem experience with beautiful character designs, great animations, super interesting branching promotion paths and things like that, was just a ton of fun. It's got so much replayability with various like reverse recruitment modes or like fixed modes, different things like that. The way they handle their actual weapon systems where you don't have consumable weapons, but you have upgradable categories of weapons that have wildly different stat distributions. Some of the different creative class ideas that they had, or even just creative character setups, the usable skills, things where you can like chain enemies in place or teleport people around, different things like that were a ton of fun. I love this game. I still go back to it semi-regularly just to play it for a while, just because I enjoy it. If you haven't played Dark Deity and you're a fan of Fire Emblem, this is absolutely an entry that you need to go check out. And now with Dark Deity 2 on the horizon, with all of the different changes to quality of life, improvements to graphics, visual design, mechanical design, all that type of stuff, I think there's going to be a ton of cool stuff to check out going forward. Never seen gameplay of Crimson Tactics, so I have no clue. Well, we do have a good few streams that you can check out about it, Daniel. It's good stuff. Fire Emblem 4 Genealogy of the Holy War is S tier. Easily. This is our first Fire Emblem title. And now note, I do have, this is something I should have mentioned at the top, but I do have all the different Fire Emblem titles that I've played, which is, tactically speaking, all of them, the mainline titles anyway, listed here, because they provide such distinct experiences, and they do have a pretty decent range in terms of quality, or at least quality to me. So we have all of them on here. We're going to be ranking them all separately. Compare that to Super Robot Wars, which is on here, but is represented by just one spot, because to me, while there's obviously distinctions between all the Super Robot Wars games, they're homogenous enough that to me, you can rank the series in one spot. At its core, the series has always been, beyond the very earliest entries before they kind of knew what they were doing, very similar. And that's part of what I love about it. But I think that means that you can pretty easily rank it as one homogenous entity. If you want to do a tier list of all the Super Robot Wars games on their own, you could definitely find differences, for sure. But for a list like this, Fire Emblem has enough differences, while Super Robot Wars is similar enough that I think we can condense SRW into one thing. Just wanted to put that out there. Anyway, Genealogy of the Holy War is absolutely S tier. It's got what I would say is probably the best story. I think Genealogy edges out Three Houses for me just a little bit in all of Fire Emblem. It's obviously pretty outdated at this point graphically, and there's definitely some rough edges, we'll say, in terms of game design that I think could be filed down or modified to make for a little bit of a smoother experience. But the fact that people like Canadian Animator Guy, who've never seen Genealogy, who've never played it, can, 3 years ago now, go in and play it for the first time and absolutely love it, tells you everything you need to know, or that you need to know about the sheer mechanical quality of the game. I think it's one of the pinnacles of Fire Emblem, and as such, since Fire Emblem is my favorite game series of all time, it absolutely deserves to be an S tier alongside Final Fantasy Tactics. It is one of the top pieces of Fire Emblem media that we've ever gotten, easily. Genealogy of the Holy War was so good. One of my favorite Fire Emblem titles. Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about that. Sloan doesn't have quality of life, but sometimes, my God, it's peak. Yep. Absolutely. There's a reason that people still recommend that new players to the franchise go and play it, despite it being older than a lot of people who are playing Fire Emblem now. Like, it's just worth it, man. It really is. Moving on. Tactics Ogre Reborn. Y'all know it's going in S tier. Like, come on. Come on. Who do you think I am? Bias aside, because of obviously what Tactics Ogre did for the channel, Tactics Ogre Reborn is the modern pinnacle of Matsuno turn-based strategy RPGs. It is refined to a point that is pretty undeniable in its quality. And yes, those of us who know it very well, you know, your coffee potatoes, myself, other members of the community who have deep dived on the mechanics far beyond anything I've had the opportunity to do, know that there's problems. Sure, there's some bugs, there's some things that don't make sense. Some people are going to argue that the cards that spawn are bad or that the removal of spells are bad. Personally, those people are wrong, but they're entitled to their opinion. But overall, in terms of taking the formula that is FFT and Tactics Ogre and honing it down to the sharpest edge that you can make, Tactics Ogre Reborn is it, man. Like, I'd love to see what happens with something like Knight of Lotus if they were to remake that and hone that down. I haven't played it yet, so I can't speak to its mechanics versus Tactics Ogre, but it just goes to show that there's still so much blood to squeeze from these very old stones. It's so impressive to see. It speaks to the mechanical quality. It speaks to the narrative quality, the character writing, the music, the visuals. Like, how many of y'all had never seen anything to do with Tactics Ogre before, came into those initial streams of mine, and immediately got hooked? A lot of you. Quite a fair bit. And that's a game that, despite its mechanical changes over the years, has, from a design standpoint, remained relatively unchanged for decades. And that's extremely impressive, for sure. Channel making title. Honestly, it's how I found your channel. It's how a lot of people found my channel. That and Unicorn Overlord. And Engage, to a certain degree. But Tactics Ogre and Unicorn Overlord were the big ones, for sure. Absolutely. Tactics Ogre S tier easily. Probably the best story I've seen in any of these games. Both absolutely true statements. I adore the story of Final Fantasy Tactics. It speaks to me a little bit more. It's a little bit more personal. But the overall grand narrative of Tactics Ogre is unmatched. I would argue in all of gaming. Just period. It's nuts. Okay, Three Houses. Three Houses, I think, is going to wind up in A tier. I absolutely adore Three Houses. I know some people don't, but it's definitely one of the most popular games in all of Fire Emblem. The main thing that bogs it down a little bit for me is how the Edelgard storyline didn't feel quite properly fleshed out, even though I did really enjoy it. And graphically, the game definitely struggled from being the first Fire Emblem title on the Switch. Like, we can see the distinction. Engage, for all of its character design issues, just from a pure graphical design standpoint, looks way better. A graphical fidelity standpoint looks way better. So there's some issues with story. A lot of people are going to say that there's issues with gameplay. I'm not as hung up on that for Three Houses. I like the way Three Houses plays. But there's a couple of issues that do keep Three Houses out of S tier for me, alongside such juggernauts as this. That said, I adore these characters. I adore this storyline. I have played every storyline in Three Houses, and I've played Blue Lions multiple times. I love the world. I love the mechanics. I love everything about it. And I'm glad that it got so many people into the franchise because it's just that good. So while I don't think it personally breaks FFT tier, it's absolutely A tier, and I will brook no arguments in that regard. I put it B personally. Ooh, I mean, that's fair. I think, for people who had more of an issue with the story or the gameplay, that's totally fair. Definitely not for me, though. Definitely not for me. Like Three Houses is a JRPG, but not as much as a strategy RPG. Well, and that's, again, if you start talking about like depth of mechanics and everything, then there's definitely some issues there. But what they pulled together for it works so well to me that even though it's not anywhere near as deep as so many other titles, it doesn't feel bad. Like, the whole that came together, even though it's not as deep as it could be, still feels really good to play. And that end result is what matters the most to me. Me playing Metaphor right now, it's got the same graphical issues Three Houses does on a goddamn PS5. Yeah, I mean, the dev environment of a game matters just as much as the hardware that you're putting it on, right? And Metaphor has been in development for a long time. So, unfortunately, I can't say I'm too surprised. Okay, moving on. This is definitely going to be a contentious one, as we've seen in my post that went up yesterday. Darkest Dungeon. Obviously, very different from FFT, very different from Fire Emblem, very different from a lot of other strategy RPGs out there. But to me, Darkest Dungeon has always been a blend of dungeon crawler and strategy RPG. As a matter of fact, I meant to do this before the stream and then I forgot. I want to check, because I'm pretty sure I've looked at this before. I think if you actually look at the tags for Darkest Dungeon 1 on Steam, I've not looked at it on Steam for 2, but I think in its tags it has, in some form or fashion, turn-based strategy. Yep. Turn-based combat, turn-based strategy. Yep. Absolutely. RPG, it's all there. It's all there. 2 is going to be a harder argument. I think it still works, but Darkest Dungeon 1, you've got the party building. Even though they're randomly generated, because of the nature of the way the game is set up, you still get very much attached to your party members. It's turn-based combat. It's very strategic. There's permadeath. There's gear rewards, ways to build classes, meta management of your characters. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, the bones are there. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I browsed it while I was at the gym today. I believe Coffee Potato himself left a comment on that poll that was basically outlining the same thought process. So it's going to be harder to make the same arguments for Darkest Dungeon 2. But to me, Darkest Dungeon 1 is absolutely an example of a strategy RPG that was made a dungeon crawler. So I'm going to stick by that. This is my poll. Now, as far as where it's going to go, this one's going to be blasphemy. I know this one's going to be blasphemy to a lot of people. Come at me, bro. Darkest Dungeon is an S-tier game. It is so influential. It did so many different unique things so goddamn well, and I adore it so much. I've put so much time into it. I've spent so much time thinking about it. I've spent so much time modding it. I've done so many runs. It has caused me so much frustration and anger and anxiety and elation and joy and giddy happiness. Darkest Dungeon is an experience. And if you love any sort of tactical combat, any sort of strategy, any sort of RPG team building, especially if you like any sort of Lovecraftian, gothic, dark environments, I got to do it. And I got to recommend that you play it if you haven't already. Absolutely. I knew it. Let's go. Never played Darkest Dungeon, so can't speak on it. It's phenomenal if you're okay with playing a really punishing game, and if you're okay with managing things like the stress mechanic and the way that characters can freak out. It's definitely an adjustment. I've seen that mechanic, the stress mechanic, be the thing that turns people off of the game, and I get it, because there's really, at least especially prior to Darkest Dungeon coming out, I've never experienced anything like it. There's basically just like the morale break mechanic in XCOM 2, and that was pretty much it. And actually, did Darkest Dungeon actually come out before XCOM 2? I'm not sure. But it's not for everybody, for sure. But if it clicks with you, it clicks. Absolutely. We're like, Darkest Dungeon. Seriously, this game's a masterpiece? Yeah, for sure. Need to be in a specific mindset, but if you meet the game where it's at, it's great. Exactly. Jane and I, many hours spent in college with me playing Darkest Dungeon and her like giving oversight, recommending different things, like bonding over characters, crying when they would die. Very good times. Very good times. The last spell. Okay. This one's going to be interesting. I mean, last spell is obviously definitely a turn-based strategy RPG. It is basically tactics or Fire Emblem, but what if everything was a defense mission? The one thing that gets me about the last spell is it's always felt very samey to me. And I know with updates and added content, tweaks and modifications to things, that's been changed up a bit. But at the end of the day, every mission boils down to build the wall, build defenses, keep building up your characters so that they can kill as many zombies in a turn as possible, and just try to keep them from getting as many hits on you as possible. You'll hit boss fights, stuff like that. The meta progression is really good. I do really enjoy it from a gameplay experience, don't get me wrong. But I haven't finished it. I've always been more compelled to play other stuff. As much as I've had times where I'm absolutely obsessed with it, I've had issues with it sticking in the same way that a lot of these other games have. It is not a bad game by any means. Not even a middle-of-the-road game. It's very good. It's very, very good. I think it goes in B tier. And note, that's in the full context of me not having really experienced the full breadth of the game since it hit its 1.0 release and then dropped its major DLC. I am behind the times on that. I know that fully. But based off of all the time that I've spent with the game thus far, especially during early access and everything, that feels comfortable. That feels like a solid spot. I think I have nostalgia for Last Spell because that was one of the first games we got community characters for on the channel. Yeah. Yes, it is. God, and what a glorious time it was. You, Tenshi, and Fine, and Canadia, the four of you. You guys were like the first ones. And y'all fought like demons. It was great. Okay, Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga. This is an easy A tier. Dude, I'd never expected to have an indie title that's so well blended. Fire Emblem, FFT, and Ogre Battle. Not Tactics Ogre, Ogre Battle. In such a compelling way. I know I've not played it on the channel. I did one video talking about it, the first ever episode of Turn-Based Strategy Saturday. Or the Turn-Based Strategy Spotlight, which has now become defunct because it's just hard to keep up. But there's a reason that I've never played it on the channel. And as I've talked about before, that reason is the day that it came out, I bought it. I was up at my parents' place. I was like, all right, I'll play this for a couple hours, see how it is, see if it's something I'm going to want to play on the channel. 10 hours later, the sun was rising. And I'd beaten half the game. Shit's real good. Shit's real good. Like, insanely good. Absolutely phenomenal. Symphony of War, the Nephilim Saga is a game that if you have a PC and you're at all interested in tactics, Fire Emblem, or Ogre Battle, you have to check it out. Being able to put together squads. Again, like if you've played Unicorn Overlord, you need to check out Symphony of War. Being able to put together squads of all these different unique characters that have their own skills, their own weapon types, their own advantages and disadvantages, and figuring out how you're going to navigate those squads around a Fire Emblem FFT style map and achieve all your different objectives, seeing all the different ways that you can develop those characters, having a whole tech tree that's going to unlock different skills or even different whole promotions for those characters, having what is honestly some of the most interesting fantasy world building I've seen in a game in the last 10 years, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Symphony of War is phenomenal. Absolutely great. It has some issues. Some of the art, some of the animations are a little clunky. There's certain quality of life things that are a little That keeps it from being S tier for me. But the next game, If Dancing Dragon Studios has shown anything, it's that they can put out a banger. And much like with Dark Deity 2, I'm expecting some really great stuff from those guys. So, for now, Symphony of War is going to be A tier. It absolutely deserves to be up amongst some of the highest ranked stuff. It's phenomenal. I adore it. Tom tried to play it on the channel, he wouldn't be able to take him away. I mean, now that I've played it once, I could break myself away from it, but it sucked me into something fierce originally. Got the opposite problem where I feel the need to complete a game fully before moving to the next one. I used to have that issue. YouTube broke me of that. This list is too nice. What, am I not being harsh enough? Is that the issue here? Well, we have a lot of games to come across here, okay? All right. A lot of things to do. Speaking of which, it's Front Mission, First Remake. Front Mission, First Remake, I enjoyed. But it would get frustrating. It would absolutely get frustrating. Part of it is just older game design. Part of it is certain things that I kind of figured would be made more apparent in a modern remaster that weren't. Like the way you would unlock skills, or how generally useless melee is, or how goddamn hard it can be to just kill a single enemy mech if you haven't unlocked the ability to target specific body parts. The fact that there's certain terrain that certain types of legs just can't navigate properly. And you're not told that in any way. You're not told that it's coming up unless there's like a little bit of like pre-mission dialogue that mentions it, but there's nothing like in a mission objective that talks about it. So you just experiment with it for yourself. There's just certain things. RNG is a huge factor in a way that gets a little bit debilitating. The number of misses that you can get is extremely frustrating. And, you know, older game story is pretty basic. I really do enjoy the character portraits, the art, the design of all the mechs. The story itself is compelling enough. Then when you get to the second story, and like that is weird because it becomes extremely punishingly difficult until you get like a couple of upgrades. There's just certain things. It's just not quite tweaked in a way that makes it really hum, even though I did still enjoy the experience. So it'll probably be our first C tier. I mean, I did go through both stories. I did enjoy my time, but I had to force myself a little bit. I'm excited to check out Front Mission Remake 2 and then 3 once that drops. I've heard that those are far better received than the first game, so this could really just be an issue with the first title in the series. They don't really know what they want to do with it yet. Happens all the time. Would not be surprised. But compared to other stuff on this list, I think it's a solid C tier. Now Darkest Dungeon 2. Boy, I've gone on record being pretty critical of Darkest Dungeon 2, man. I think this is going to be our first couldn't finish. And it's frustrating. It really is. There's so much that I like about Darkest Dungeon 2. I love the art. Absolutely beautiful. All the animations are phenomenal. The development of the different heroes, very interesting. But I don't like the roguelike style. I don't like the road trip nature of it. All of the bosses are insanely frustrating to fight in a way that I never really felt with the bosses in DD1. It's just a frustrating experience to play, and it's lost so much of what makes the first game so compelling for me. So even though we've started multiple playthroughs in early access and then in full release, I've played it a fair bit on my own. I've done guides for it. I've had time to play it. And I've just preferred to do other stuff. So, yeah, I think it has to sit and couldn't finish. It's rough. It's rough. Also, If you didn't hear the door open, there's a Jane. Hello, darling. How you doing? Yes. Yes, my cam is on. Chat can say hello to the Jane. She could make an appearance for you, but she won't. So, what's up? Nothing. How you doing? Yeah? You have a good day at work? Okay. Very good. Oh, God. She dropped the cap for her water bottle. Yes, I'm about halfway through my tier list, so I'll be going for probably another like half hour-ish, just as an FYI, so you know where things are at. So, are you going to survive? Okay. I know you're very sad. There's a very delicious pot roast that's on right now, though. Did you see the initial picture I sent you? It's going to be really good. Oh, yes, there's the High Janes popping in. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for welcoming Jane back, much as you welcomed me back. It's very much appreciated. Yeah, man. Darkest Dungeon 2, it's rough. What do you guys have to say? Need another Aegis Eclipse to balance things out. I don't know if there's going to be anything on this list that's that bad. C and D are empty. Well, we've had some bangers up front, man. All right, chill. We got a lot of stuff to go through here. Like Front Mission 1, but the lack of battle forecast killed me. Yeah. They'll be filled soon, I can tell. I don't see Mercenary Saga on this list. Haven't played it. I know I need to. It's on my to-do list, but looking at the next ones, all, yeah, you know. Mighty Sword of... Oh, God. Poor Red Hook. Yeah, the fact that Red Hook got acquired, it ain't great. There's like a solid 50% of the fan base that is not super happy with Darkest Dungeon 2, and I mean, I fall into that same category. My buddy Jordan, who's played probably a solid 400 to 500 more hours of Darkest Dungeon 1 than I have, and I've played many hundreds of hours of Darkest Dungeon 1, he was way more optimistic about DD2. And I don't know if he's finished it either. Like, people who love it. And there's aspects I love about it, but man, I think they messed up. They've been implementing a lot of feedback they've gotten since launch. They have, absolutely. But I don't know, man. Then you got like paid DLC to get popular characters like the Crusader back and everything who really should have been in from the beginning and they weren't for tenuously okay reasons. But then they put the Vestal back in because how do you not have the Vestal, and made a reason why she could still be there. And it's like, well, where's Crusader? Because he's the most popular character. And they made you pay for him. Like, I don't know, Red Hook. It's just not on cooling. Put it on. Because it was 40 degrees when I got home from the gym. Hell, just crack a window if you want. So put the air on. See if it runs. It might be too cold out, but... Oh, when did that happen? I wonder if Trixie tried to bother something and knocked it over. Okay, let me get caught up on chat here. If Battle 64 was up here, I would put it on B tier because of lack of mechanics explanation. Possibly, yeah. The Dark Souls 2 of Darkest Dungeon. But see, if that was the case, it would be far superior to Darkest Dungeon 1, and it's not. Hard to release consistent bangers. Devs' second games tend to be the black sheep. Well, yeah. I just think they didn't need to deviate from the dungeon crawler formula. Like, there's so many cool areas in DD2. I won't deviate on this too much, but like just the development of the story with the whole thing with the mountain and everything, I think they totally could have done. The graphical overhaul, they still totally could have done. They could have had all these different areas, all these different like lair bosses, the new character classes. There's no reason that they couldn't have done that and had it be in the same overall like dungeon crawly experience. I don't think and to go with a roguelike of all things, that genre, especially like the, I won't go too far off on this tangent because we have to get to the rest of the entries, but like to go the sort of like you have a map and you're navigating between a few different nodes as you move vertically through it style of roguelike is just so overplayed. Even when DD2 came out, I just don't think it was the right call. But what can you do? You're insane? I'm insanely based, you mean. You missed a word there. Final Fantasy 2 I still love as well. I like Final Fantasy 2 more than Final Fantasy 1, as iconic as FF1 is. I like the story and the characters and the progression of FF2, so... But just part of my base nature, I suppose. Anyway, we have to move on here. We have a lot of entries to get through. So, FE3 Remake we have here. I think this is a pretty solid B. The DS Fire Emblems, the remakes of 1 and 3 are a little rough. Graphically, they're still not great. Funny enough, I might actually wind up rating Shadow Dragon higher because I like its replayability more. But Mystery of the Emblem, New Mystery of the Emblem, is really good. Like, mechanically, story-wise, it is structured way better than Shadow Dragon, absolutely. But there's just certain things about it, like the new cast of characters, the inclusion of like a pseudo support thing was kind of eh. It introduced Avatar characters, which I'm not super high on at this point if it's not specifically Robin. It's fine. Like, it's a good Fire Emblem game. Absolutely. No doubt. But it's probably the one that I've had the least interest in going back to replay. Even though I think it's definitely mechanically a lot more solid than other ones on this list that are going to be ranked lower. So, okay. Sword of Convallaria, I think, is very solidly B tier as well. It has its issues, of course. The fact that it's tied to the gacha mode is definitely a little eh. But that said, I love the characters. I love the visuals. I love the mechanics. There's stuff that I definitely think is a little shallow mechanically, like some of the rewards that you get and the town management could definitely be a lot deeper, and I think it's not because of being tied to a gacha mode and being designed with mobile friendliness in mind. But even with that, the different classes, the different skills, the different mechanics that are at play are a ton of fun to play with. Like, I do really enjoy Sword of Convallaria. I think it is a very, very strong entry in the overall pantheon of turn-based strategy RPGs, but I don't think, given its nature, it reaches the same heights as some other things on this list. I do love it, though. Absolutely. B too high for Sword of Convallaria or for New Mystery of the Emblem? Moving on to Disgaea 1. I've not finished Disgaea 1, but it's not one that I'm going to put in couldn't finish because I do want to go back to it. It's just always a game that I've just kind of picked at, like, over the holiday when I'm up at my parents' place, or, like, just when I have a little bit of downtime, and I haven't had a lot of that recently, but I do adore what it's doing. Like, it's got that old, like, early 2000s goofy anime vibe, but the art style is great, and, like, the whole demon world vibe of all the different, like, characters being evil demons but also having compassion, and you being this demon prince is just super fun. The printies and the different wild gameplay mechanics like geotiles and being able to stack up towers of characters that you can then throw around. Printies explode. Like, the endless scalability of the item world, just the concept of the item world is so much fun to just spend time in grinding and exploring. It's absolutely a very, very strong experience. I think it's very solidly B tier. There's certain things that definitely could use a lot more explanation and fleshing out. And from what I understand, they get that in future entries. But I want to see what else Disgaea has to offer. And it is a very fun experience on its own. It just has been superseded by a lot of other games that I could be playing. But I really want to see Disgaea 3, 4, and 5. I've heard great things about them. I've heard good stuff about 2 as well. I think it's a very strong franchise. I just need the time to really dig into it, for sure. FE3 Remake. Gotcha. The second game, Curse. Yep. Town mechanics are too stiff for me to appreciate. Yeah, I think if the town mechanics were a little bit deeper and a little bit more fleshed out, Sword would go up to A rank for me. I still enjoy that they exist, and I do enjoy just the overall loop, but it gets very rote very quickly. Now, this is probably going to be a controversial one. FE6, Sealed Sword / Binding Blade. This is C tier. This is probably my least favorite Fire Emblem game of all time. And that's a shame because I love Roy. But as the first GBA title, It's got a lot of rough edges. A lot of the maps, very uninspired, very bland-looking game in general. So many of the characters are completely useless. So many of the characters have zero likability or compelling features to them whatsoever. The story has so much potential, but it's so much just a kind of retread of FE3. Like, Zephiel is in so many ways just hardened. He's just not possessed. Like, yeah, like Canadian said, it's very bland. My least favorite FE2, lol. Yeah, exactly. Like, it is not a bad game. And I would rather replay. This is what's weird, right? Like, I'd rather replay Binding Blade over FE3 Remake because, like, the GBA formula is just so good. But from a mechanical, visual, story standpoint, it just doesn't hit as hard. It's weird. I know. But yeah, it's just FE6 is just so weird in that regard, man. It's rough around the edges in ways that are hard to get past as a longtime Fire Emblem fan. I think C is a very appropriate place for it, for sure. Absolutely. I think you made the right call here. Yeah, I think it's an appropriate place to put it, for sure. I mean, just comparing it to the other two GBA games alone, it's a huge difference. Okay. Now, I know it's kind of cut off weird here, but Echoes. Echoes, I think, is a very strong A tier. I know, again, with map design stuff, people are likely to crucify me for that. But story of Echoes, very good. Visuals of Echoes, phenomenal. The gameplay animations, great. Mechanics, extremely strong. Dungeons, super cool to explore. Characters, very compelling. Dual narrative split, the way it's done on the map and everything, super cool. Soundtrack, god tier. Really, the only thing dragging Echoes down is that it does suffer from old school Fire Emblem map design. And I don't mind that, because I prefer a game that lets its mechanics speak for itself rather than throwing gimmick maps at you constantly to keep things fresh and interesting, quote unquote. But, you know, you just get a lot of cavalry rush maps and stuff like that. There's more they could do in that older school formula than is done here. But all of the other aspects of the game are so strong that it has to be an A tier for me. Soundtrack alone, SOV is A tier. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's ranking of every game you've played. Hey, Riley. Yes, this is ranking every strategy RPG I've ever played. It's something I've been thinking about the whole time that I was in Japan, and I think I've got every game on this list at this point. So, yeah, Echoes is absolutely A tier. It's one of my more preferred Fire Emblem games. I think it's a phenomenal entry in the series and strategy RPGs as a whole. It's absolutely phenomenal. It just has a couple of issues, but Engage. This is a tough one, man, because I love Engage so much mechanically, but I also hate the way it looks so much, and I hate so many of the characters so much. It's got to go B tier. It's too mechanically strong to drop lower, even though just the designs and the characters and the writing are so horrendous in so many ways. But the actual graphical fidelity is so good. The mechanics are so strong. The callbacks to the rest of the franchise, the Engage mechanic are all so good. I can't put it anywhere else. It's a game of absolute highs and absolute lows, and it balances out to be a pretty middle-of-the-road experience. Like, even though I have so many negatives that I put against it, it's perfectly balanced by all the things that I love about it. Like, Engage is absolutely a game that I'll go back and play for the rest of my life. No doubt. I'm never going to be able to get past what I dislike about it. It won't keep me from playing it, but it will always bug me. And I don't think there's any other Fire Emblem game that I can say that about, which is really weird. FFT tier, you're in. No, nope. You're just flat out wrong, sir. You are just incorrect. That is as incorrect of a statement as your opinions on Sekiro. How about that? Did I put Chrono Trigger on this list? No. It's just like standard, like Super Nintendo RPG, JRPG stuff. So, you know, not in the way it's like turn-based like a Final Fantasy game, but nah, definitely not. Thracia 776. I think this is going to be another B tier. I like 776 a lot. It's just, I think it suffers narratively a little bit by being wedged between the, not just generations, but chapters of Genealogy of the Holy War. If it had more room to breathe narratively, I think it would be stronger. And while I love all the interesting things that it did from a game design standpoint, like with the stamina system and the capture mechanic and like all your army needing to flee before Leaf escapes a map, otherwise they get captured, like all that type of stuff, the way they handle dismounting, like there's a ton of really cool stuff in Thracia, but it didn't get properly fleshed out. And until more recent titles where they've gone back to certain things like the capture mechanic and stuff like that to a degree in Fates, has never had the chance to get fleshed out. I think of the games that we're kind of waiting for a remake of at this point for Fire Emblem, even though I want to see Genealogy the most because Genealogy is just so good, I think Thracia deserves it the most. Because Thracia has so much going for it that if it just got tuned a little bit, tweaked just slightly, could achieve insane heights. But as it is, it's kind of like Engage in that way. Like, I love the characters and the story of 776 so much, even if they have their problems. I love the mechanics as they exist so much, but they have problems that I can't see past, so that drags it down a bit. Tom out for blood lol. I was joking. No, I'm extremely serious about this opinion. Still really want to play this one. You should. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Shadow Dragon. Shadow Dragon, I have to put in A, man. I've spent so many hours replaying Shadow Dragon. Like, it's just Fire Emblem distilled to its core. If Shadow Dragon had been remade on the GBA, I think it'd be S tier. Just because it is the Fire Emblem. It is the original. All of your major story beats come from here, and so they deserve to stand on their own. They're not rote. They're not overplayed. They're just Fire Emblem. This is where you get Marth. This is where you get the Falchion. This is where you get the basis of all the classes, the way that maps work, your permadeath, all the different character archetypes. This is where it comes from. And to this day, it still stands strong. Like I said, I've replayed this game a ton. The maps just flow. The story doesn't get in the way. The different classes all feel like they have a good niche that they fit in. And then you can reclass in this version as well and come up with all sorts of crazy different character builds. Even though you don't have like classes and things, just manipulating growths and stats and like weapon tiers, you can still do so much with it. The fact that you actually have the ability to get different unique characters if you let your characters die. It leans into the permadeath aspect of Fire Emblem in a way that I wish other games in the series would. There's a lot going on here. And I do really think that it deserves to be an A tier. To me, not exclusively, but a big part of how highly I rate a game is how much I want to replay it. So despite its faults, being ugly is sin, having a fairly basic storyline with fairly basic characters that, again, I think still deserve to be ranked on their own because they're the OG, the sheer replay value of this game puts it pretty high for me. Shadow Dragon take is based. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Now, Together in Battle. This is a much more recent one. And if Sinister Design is here, then this is his baby right here. Together in Battle is a game that I did not expect to suck me in the way that it did, man. I spent so much time in Japan playing this game on the Steam Deck, and I've spent so much time since we got back playing it too. It's in early access, so I can't fault it too much. I've run into plenty of issues with it, bugs and whatnot that I've forwarded to Sinister Design. But the overall core that is here is so compelling. There's going to be people that don't like the art style. There's going to be people that don't like this and that. Totally get it. but the mechanical strength of this game is so good. All the different mage classes, all the different kind of fiddly ways that you can manipulate the battlefield. The fact that you have an engineer class to put down traps and walls and build bridges. The fact that you have a kineticist mage that's basically just a Jedi, that their whole primary function is pushing and pulling people at range to get them away from your guys, or pull them into rivers or pits so that they start drowning, or so that they die outright, push them into fires, or just knock them against other dudes and have them take damage. The fact that you have like fun tweaks to the Fire Emblem and FFT formulas, like you have your Cavaliers, long range, they get to use their movement if they have any left over after they finish their attack. They use lances, except they're riding giant mantises, and they have different special abilities that let them like charge a certain distance and knock things back and stun them. Like, there's so many cool mechanical things going on with Together in Battle. I have to put it in A tier. And really, the only reason I'm not putting it in S tier right now is because there have been a ton of different like little fiddly early access bugs or just balance problems that I've run into that have made for a frustrating experience at times. But this is one of the games that recently I've been like, I want to get off of work or get home from the gym or finish working on what I'm working on for the channel so that I can play more Together in Battle. Or like when we were in Japan, like, you know, had all these great experiences, saw all these cool things. But I'm kind of excited for the fact that we have a 3-hour Shinkansen ride tomorrow just so I can chill on the train and play Together in Battle on my Steam Deck. Like, it is so cool, man. I can only hope that once early access is done and like different bugs and tweaks have been hammered out and changed and everything, that this becomes an all-timer and that I can convince a bunch of people to play it. Because goddamn, if you just love mechanical complexity and well thought out, well put together classes and battlefield interaction and management of a party, this one's for you, man. And the fact that it's got a bunch of like randomness, sort of roguelike nature to it, even though it's a full-fledged campaign, but each new campaign is going to run differently with different events, different types of characters, all that type of stuff, different character interactions, because each character is unique in their own right. Like, there's so much replayability here. It's so sick. So I heard giant mantis mounts based on as hell on that alone. Yeah, dude, seriously. Like, Cavaliers are basically just Fire Emblem Cavaliers functionally, but you're riding a giant mantis. It's so cool. Absolutely adore Together in Battle. Phenomenal. Fire Emblem Fates is A tier. Actually, no. Fire Emblem Fates is S tier. Fuck you. Absolutely. Based story, based characters, based gameplay, great classes. Love the differences between Hoshido and Nor. No notes. It's one of my favorite Fire Emblems of all time. Come at me. I will fight all of you. I will be Neo in the Matrix, dodging all of your faux accusations of being biased or stories being bad. No, I don't care. Fates is one of my favorite Fire Emblems of all time. I think it's great. It's got an easier, more simple storyline and gameplay in Hoshido for those who want that. Great mechanical depth, complexity, challenge, and compelling characters if you play Nor. And I'm going to say it. A really interesting melding of the two if you go into Revelations. And it's a whole lot of content to be able to play through. My Castle is still the best iteration of any sort of base or like home territory that you can go back to that they've done in the series thus far. The character designs are absolutely some of the best in the series. Some of the best in strategy games in general. Done. S tier. That's it. You can't even fight me. We're just going to move on. Done. One of the worst localization jobs of all time, unfortunately, on top of an already not so great story. Hurts Fates. The improvements over Awakening were great, though. I mean, that's fair. But damn, at the end of the day, I still love it. P5 Tactica. Man, this one's tough. P5 Tactica is tough, man. I'm not sure if it goes in couldn't finish or D. I had fun playing it while I played it. But once I hit the point where I wasn't allowed to show any more of it because of Atlas's weird embargo on showing past a certain point, I felt no compulsion to go further. I think I could finish it. I could. Because I do enjoy playing it to a degree. It's way too simple. It's way too formulaic. But there's just so much more that I feel like they could have done with it that they just didn't. And then just like, God, the Morgana voice lines. And like so much of the game is just, how can I set up my triangle attack? And that's it. Yeah. I think it's got to go to D. I just realized something. I don't have Into the Breach on here. I don't have Into the Breach on here. Hold on. I got to add Into the Breach to this really quick. Hold on. Hold the phone. We're going to put up the, where is it? We're going to put up the starting soon really quick because I have to go and download, or not even download, just save an image of Into the Breach. This is of vital importance because Into the Breach is actually a title that I really enjoy, and it is absolutely something that should be in this tier of games. Hold on. The reason I thought about it is because P5 Tactical reminds me of Into the Breach in a lot of ways, but without any of the substance that makes Into the Breach really hum. So let me just do this really quick. We're going to add an additional image. God, I hope this doesn't reset the whole thing. If this resets the whole thing, I'm going to be very upset. There we go. Cool. There it is. Into the Breach is here. Let me go ahead and take the going live off the screen. Boom. There we go. Into the Breach right here. We'll talk about that, I guess, at the end. Okay. P5 Strikers, the Muso one was much better IMO. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Okay. Yeah, I think P5 Tactica goes in D. It just didn't impress in the way that I expected it to. I'll probably go back and finish it at some point, but I've got no major compulsion to right now. Unicorn Overlord is S tier. I mean, what do you expect? Really? Like, not just because it did so much for the channel, but just, oh my god. You want to talk about the opposite spectrum of Atlas games here? Obviously, Vanillaware is the dev here, but still, like, music, visuals, story's pretty good. Not as good as everything else. Character designs, strategic design, classes, progression, world map, map exploration. It is just like... It's one of my favorite games of all time. Y'all already know. Like, I don't even need to go into it that much. If you're watching this, you've probably seen my Unicorn Overlord coverage. Like, it's just a top-tier game. It's probably going to be my game of the year. And without really much competition. Like, Space Marine 2 is probably going to get second closest. And, I mean, that's a good game, too. Don't get me wrong. But, like, Unicorn Overlord is just a game that fired on every single cylinder for all of my interests. No notes. It's just a perfect game. All around. Done. Like, I can't even, there's nothing more I can talk about. It's just great. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Okay, Pokemon Conquest. I think C is for Conquest. This is an interesting one. Because Pokemon Conquest, I do really like. I do really, really like. The issue is it's too simple. If you didn't know, Pokemon Conquest is a blending of, like, FFT and Nobunaga's Ambition, but with a Pokemon skin. And it's really cool. Like, the concept is really cool. All of the designs are really fun. And the moment-to-moment gameplay is really engaging. The problem is that there's not much depth. Each Pokemon has one attack. They will only ever have one attack. They have that attack and an item. All of your different, like, elemental advantages and disadvantages are there. But until a Pokemon evolves, it will only ever have that one attack. Once it evolves, it will only have the one attack of its evolved form. And that's it. The way the campaign progresses is interesting enough. It is fun. You go through, you conquer different nations, you actually build up each of those individual nations. They each have their own different terrain pieces, like a bank or different like maps that you can find different Pokemon on. You can actually capture different Pokemon with different warlords. And a lot of the fun of the game comes from building up your army of warlords. You can have 6 at a time in any given area, and you can attack any given area with 6 at a time. And each of those warlords has different Pokemon that they have better and better affinity with. You get your Pokemon to evolve by getting them to a certain affinity, meaning only certain warlords are going to be able to get certain Pokemon to evolve. So a lot of the fun of the game is finding what warlords go with what Pokemon, and then figuring out how to recruit the named warlords so you can max out your teams, right? The issue is that you finish the main story. It's fairly quick, but then you're like, I only got to recruit some of the warlords, and there was a relatively minimal amount of Pokemon that I was able to recruit. And then even though you find Arceus and at the end and you fight Nobunaga, who has shiny Rayquaza, you don't actually get to get them. And then it's done. And then you find out that the game is going to throw like 30 different campaigns at you, all with different starting warlords through different basically filler storylines that will explore smaller or bigger chunks of the map with different objectives. And while that's interesting and it allows you to continue to develop your roster of warlords over time, because any progress that you make with different warlords and Pokemon carries over to future campaigns, it's still just the same maps over and over. It's the same objectives over and over. And once you get the perfect Pokemon with the perfect warlord, they're strong, but there's no more progression to be had there. So you wind up running to this point where you get about halfway through the campaigns, and it's like, I've got a perfect collection of characters that can just breeze through everything. And at this point, I'm just spending time grinding to get the perfect Pokemon with the different warlords and get them evolved before I finish a mission, because the missions are the campaigns are pretty easy to clear, just for the sake of that progression. So I've never actually finished the game. I intend to at some point. It's not a matter of not being able to finish it, but I go back and play it for like a few weeks once every year or two. And I've just been slowly picking away at it over time. There's a lot of fun stuff there, but it runs its course and it outstays its welcome very quickly. And it takes a long time for me to get back to the point where I want to play it again. So yeah, I think C tier is perfectly appropriate for Conquest. It is fun, and I do recommend checking it out if you're at all interested. But to get everything done is an insane slog, and there's just too much sameness to the game. A lot of stuff I was looking forward to this year missed the mark, but I do want to play Unicorn Overlord for the end of the year. And you do have it, so you got that going for you. Did we? What made him rank Persona a D? Yeah, Atlas kept me from playing it, and there's just not enough mechanical depth there to make it interesting for its runtime, unfortunately. Chimera Squad. XCOM Chimera Squad. This is another, do I put it in D or couldn't finish? I think it goes couldn't finish. I don't have as much of a mechanical problem with Chimera Squad. In fact, I like a lot of what it does mechanically. But it again feels very narrow and restrictive. The fact that in Chimera Squad you are essentially running what is a glorified SWAT team, yet as you proceed through the game, you wind up running into missions that are as deep and difficult, if not even deeper and more difficult than XCOM 2 missions, but you still are limited to a squad of 4 guys with a much more limited roster of abilities and gear available to them. Really hurts. Chimera Squad is very obviously a game that was made by a secondary team as a test bed for mechanics that they want to eventually include in XCOM 3, and it has a level of shallowness to it that makes it hard to get through. At the start and at its base, I think it's awesome. Having a bunch of alien squad members, having them have unique abilities that are based on the abilities, if not outright are the abilities of those aliens in XCOM 2, having the chatter between squad mates, that's a ton of fun, having the sort of resource management that it goes into, like running a small precinct of police as opposed to having a whole big like resistance force on Earth. There's a lot going for it there. I love the breach mechanics. I love the more condensed maps. I enjoy all that type of stuff. But you hit a certain midway point where the mechanics of that running a small police precinct run into, we don't know how to make battles bigger and better and more intense than just making them XCOM 2 battles without the mechanics that are available to the player feeling like they match that. And I always hit a stalling point with the game as a result. So that's why I couldn't finish it. I adore playing it in the early stages, but then it gets to a point where it feels like the cohesion of the game just kind of falls apart, and it's a bit of a shame. Hey, Star is here. Hello, Star. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. We're going to try to move through these rest of these entries pretty quick because my voice is really starting to hurt. So, Fire Emblem Awakening is absolutely an A-tier game. I would be tempted to put it in S-tier, but it will always rub me the wrong way that hard mode has enemy turn ambush reinforcements, and it always keeps me from playing the game on hard when that's normally my preferred way to play a Fire Emblem game. But those reinforcements are just so annoying and are so apt at ending a mission 75% of the way through it and making you restart it that alone drags it down for me. Otherwise, I love the characters. I love the world. I love all the different interesting classes, all of the progression of skills and reclassing and essentially endless levelability of it. Having the children mechanic and having it be executed in a pretty fun way was a blast. The references to all the older games, being set in the timeline of Marth and Co., but thousands of years in the future. It's just so cool. All the voice work is great. All of the designs are great. The cutscenes are phenomenal. I just love everything about Awakening, except for the fact that such a core part of the gameplay experience for a Fire Emblem game is so unnecessarily annoying. And it's too important for me to be able to rank it as S, unfortunately. Now, Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones. This is a tough one. I mean, S is for Sacred Stones, obviously. But I'm really trying to keep my own bias from overwhelming me here. And in much the same way that I have to take points off of Awakening for... Oh, no. This is... God, I was looking here. Here, we'll just switch this since we were already talking about Sacred Stones at this point. Go? Hello? Thank you. We'll talk about 7 in a second. But much as I have to criticize Awakening for hard mode being bullshit because of ambush reinforcements, I think I have to criticize Sacred Stones for hard mode just not quite meeting the mark. Hard mode Sacred Stones is so much easier than hard mode of pretty much any other Fire Emblem game, and it's very disappointing. Like, it was tough when I was a kid, and Sacred Stones was the only game in the series that I'd played. But that's not the case anymore. I know what hard mode can be, and Sacred Stones doesn't quite hit that mark. Beyond that, again, I adore it. It's by far the best GBA game in the series. It's one of the stronger games in the series in general. It's got incredible artwork, incredible actual color palette for the GBA. It's just insane. You've got the 2 branching character stories. You've got the fact that you have branching promotion paths, the reintroduction of skills for the first time in a long time. There's a ton to love. The creature campaign, 2 different dungeons to explore. There's so much that's packed into a GBA title. I can't put it any lower than A, and I have no desire to. I can't put it in S because of the fact that hard mode is just a little disappointing. But Sacred Stones is obviously going to have a massive place in my heart. Now, FE7, I think, is also a pretty easy A tier. A lot of people would say it deserves to be an S, but there's certain things that I'm just, compared to Sacred Stones, it's missing. Its color palette isn't as good. We're putting it in A, but its color palette isn't as good. It doesn't have branching promotions. There's no skills except for Assassinate. The story is compelling. It absolutely is. The characters, not as much, unfortunately. It's got an armored axe lord, which I love, with Hector. But it doesn't have as much impact for me personally as Sacred Stones does. It's a little bit more rote Fire Emblem compared to Sacred Stones and like Leon's story and everything. It just doesn't hit quite the same. It's still a phenomenal game. But of the ones that I'm likely to go back and replay and feel attached to, Sacred Stones definitely hits harder. And if it wasn't for the difficulty stuff with Sacred Stones, I'd put it higher. I do love Hector Hard Mode and the difficulty that that brings to the table with FE7. It makes for a very tight experience. But I'm just not as attached to the characters of the story or the world. Little bland like FE6, but not too much. It's definitely more compelling than FE6. And I do like the way it sets up FE6. So it's got that going for it. XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is S tier. XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is fucking phenomenal. Absolutely. Like, dude, they added so much to the game when they technically finished it with War of the Chosen. There's so much you can do. There's so much dynamic, interesting stuff going on with the campaign. It's so tough. The bosses are so compelling with the Chosen and everything. The storyline is so much fun. It is a beautiful looking game. XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is one of the last proper expansions we got for a game. Not DLC, expansion. It is phenomenal. There's really not too much I can say about it. It's just the definitive XCOM experience. If you're a strategy player and you haven't played XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, you need to. It just feels so good to play, man. Every single mission is heart-pounding. There's so much mod capabilities. There's so many cool characters with just like all the different special classes, like with the Templars and the Skirmishers and the Reapers, not Reavers, Reapers, right? Like and everything that they can do on top of all the different classes that you have available, like your heavies and your rangers and your snipers and just, dude, it's so much fun. XCOM 2 is great. I've been itching to do another campaign for years. And when I do, we'll definitely be doing it on the channel. So, yeah, definitely an S-tier game and an exemplar of its particular subgenre of strategy games. Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, I'd say... I'd say it's A tier. I definitely think it's A tier. The main thing keeping it from being S to me is it's definitely aged pretty poorly graphically. Cutscenes don't look great. Character models don't look great. The portraits are good, definitely. But the whole rest of the game is pretty rough looking. It is extremely replayable. It's one of the more replayable games in the series, I would say. But, yeah, I can't put it in S tier. The graphics are just rough. It is definitely a very compelling story, though. I love Ike. I love the story of him and the Black Knight. Having a lord who's not a lord is so nice. And then I do love the way that it sets up Radiant Dawn as well. Absolutely phenomenal from that standpoint. As a duology, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, one of the best experiences in the Fire Emblem series. I always have to play them back to back. If you're not doing that, I think you're doing it wrong, for sure. A-tier experience, for sure. Not sure where I'm going to put Radiant Dawn yet. That's going to be interesting. Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, I think, is a very solid B tier. I've not finished it. I played it in early access and just haven't had the time to go back to it. The art style in Fell Seal can definitely be rough. The character portraits can be rough. But I think, much like how not everyone's going to gel with the art style together in battle, mechanically, Fell Seal has a ton going for it. I really enjoy what you can start to do with characters in Fell Seal, a little bit that I saw, and that makes me rate it pretty high. But the art style, and then the fact that from what I've seen of it, the story of Fell Seal is literally just tactics. Like, it's pretty much just tactics in a more modern setting, like a steampunky type of setting, is pretty... I would like so much more from it, man. I think it makes for a very solid B tier experience, though, and I do really want to go back and play the whole rest of it now that it's out of early access and it has an expansion and all that type of stuff. So, not a bad game by any means, but it's got its downsides. Tactics Advance, I think. Oh man, hate to say it, but I think I got to put Tactics Advance in C tier. And I say that even though I love the game. I love this game, but it definitely has problems. Notably, its story is not one. I love the story of Tactics Advance. The whole idea of a child having an artifact thrown into their hands that allows them to create their ideal fantasy world where they can escape from all the problems of real life and all of the problems that causes for people along the way, and how you need to accept what life is and the realities of it, so that way you can make the most of it. Like, you can't just run away from things, is such a compelling story, especially because it's all kids. It's a rough lesson, especially for children, but it's so good, and the characters are so compelling. I do love it for having tactics-style gameplay. My major issues come from the fact that mechanically it definitely has aged, graphically it has definitely aged, and there's so many times that you can run into a frustrating lack of forward momentum from a mechanical standpoint. Just the fact that, like, you can run out of weapons to learn skills from for a class and just have to wait until you find other ones. You haven't mastered the class. You just got to wait until the game decides that you're allowed to learn more skills. That's rough. That's annoying. The fact that the the Morpher, right, class is basically completely useless as an extension of Beastmaster is sad. There's a lot of issues with the law system. Even though I love the law system, you get to a point where it's just like, well, I just have a nullify all laws card, and I've got a stack of them, so I'm just going to remove this mechanic from the game after a certain point. Is like, the fact that evasion rates can be such a problem if you're trying to attack from the front or the sides gets annoying. There's just issues with it. And hell, the fact that you can lock yourself out from being able to complete all 300 missions because the inventory is so limited, and as you're trying to figure out how to manage it and have all the requisite items on hand that you need for a bunch of different things, that you can accidentally throw away an item that you didn't know you needed to be able to unlock the final mission in the game, and there's no way to get it back, and it leaves you as an 8-year-old child desperately sobbing, calling the Nintendo hotline, finding out if they can help you in any way get it back, and then the very nice lady on the other end of the hotline sounds so sad that she can't. She recommends that you restart the game, but you don't want to because you've completed everything else in the game, and it took like 200 hours to do, which as a child is a lot of time. Leaves a little bit of a bitter taste on the tongue. So I think C tier is where Tactics Advance is going to sit. I still love the game, and I want to play it on the channel, but it's got problems. A2, Grimoire of the Rift, fixes a lot of those problems, and I really enjoy it. It still has its issues, but I think it goes solidly in B tier. A2 doesn't have nearly as compelling of a story or characters as Tactics Advance does, and it's kind of awkward since it's connected more to 12 rather than continuing some of the storylines and themes of Advance, but then still tries to tie back to them. It's kind of weird. But I love the ways that A2 advanced the Tactics Advance series, even though there's only 2 of them. Graphically, mechanically, and overall made a deeper, more rich experience. The problem, as I said, is the narrative is nowhere near as compelling, and also you still run into issues with progression that can be very annoying. And that issue with progression is the bazaar, wherein you bring items to the bazaar and you offer them up and see what gear and weapons you unlock as a result. And there's so many. And some of the resources are so limited. And it's so hard to know without just saving and reloading, trying different combinations if you're not pulling up like a guide on the internet, right? How to get the things that you want for the classes and characters that you want to use. It can take so long to progress in a class because you're just waiting desperately to unlock a basic ass weapon that statistically sucks at the point in the story that you're in, but you just haven't gotten the right drop of a random type of freaking ore to be able to unlock that weapon in the bazaar. And then you still have to buy the damn thing. Like, it leads to such weird progression problems sometimes if you're not just outright using a guide. And even if you are, sometimes you still just got to wait for the materials to drop. So it's like, in a game that has a great sandbox with a ton of great classes, 2 new races that have classes of their own, things that have been tweaked to make it more useful and more efficient and more compelling to try out. It's such a fun sandbox to exist in with so many unnecessary breaks and checks and limiters on you that can make it that, like, your favorite class is just hamstrung for hours without you being able to do anything about it. That said, I love the world, like the more open world map. I do really enjoy the more involved mission structure, the more varied objectives, the bosses, the actual like big boss creatures. A2 does a ton right. There's just certain things that hold it back in a way that are incredibly frustrating. Baby Tom lore. What item was it? It was the rat tail. I will always remember. I've talked about this on stream before, I think, but yeah, the rat tail that you need to have on hand to go on the mission where you unlock Judge Sid, and it's the last mission in the game, and you can't do it, and you can't get another rat tail, and they let you throw it away if you are trying to make space in your inventory and it's been sitting there the entire time and you had no idea. FFTA sounds like Ada's Eclipse here after that story. No, it's way too strong of a game for that. Definitely. A2 is very grindy, but I still love it. Yeah, definitely. Guild Saga Vanished Worlds is obviously a very fresh one. I've not had the chance to spend much time with it. And as such, I can't rank it too highly just because I don't know that much about it. But just off of potential alone, I think it goes in B tier. I love the music. I love the blend of like Final Fantasy Tactics and Divinity Original Sin / Baldur's Gate combat and inventory management. I love all the different elemental interactions, magical and physical armor. The world and its story seems like it could be super good. The main things holding it back, I think, are the potential that the story could wind up falling off, but there's really just kind of a potential thing, so I can't knock it too much. And then the art style can be very divisive, like the character portraits versus the world sprites and everything. I really like it. It's got a ton of potential, but I don't think I can rank it much higher than B tier in good faith, but I do think it definitely deserves a look, and I'm definitely going to be playing more of it, either on or off the channel as soon as I have the opportunity to, because I do really enjoy the moment-to-moment gameplay and the world and the music and everything else of Guild Saga, but I don't have that much I can say about it right now. Joan of Arc, I think, also goes in B tier. It has some limitations, but I've loved what I've played of it thus far. I need to dive in and play more of it, but I love the transformations. I love some of the different character types that we've had. There's just certain things, like the slottable runes, seem like they probably wind up getting a little limited, and then it feels like very quickly characters that don't have transformations are going to fall off, and I don't like that in games like this where you get a wide array of characters that have a lot of different skills and different capabilities. Having the characters that have just the blatant plot transformations, it can be okay if your generic characters or your characters that don't have them can also perform. But based on what we were getting to thus far, fairly early in Joan of Arc, it very quickly felt like my characters with transformations were becoming the way to play, with a couple minor exceptions. So, I don't know. I need to get back in and play more of it. But it is definitely a compelling experience. I think B tier is a decent place for it. Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, specifically differentiated from Reborn, is C tier. And I know that might be surprising for people, but I have issues. I have issues with Let Us Cling Together in how goddamn grindy it is, how incredibly annoying and frustrating the forging system is, and just how slow it is, man. There is absolutely no reason that a character with a cool class that you get for the first time should need to be ground up from level 1 because it's their class that dictates their level, and you have had no chance to use that class up to that point. There is no reason that there should be a failure rate on forging any weapon or armor when those weapons and armor are so intrinsic to the strength and capabilities of your characters. There is no reason why you should be compelled to grind the same battles over and over for literal hours just to be able to level up a weapon proficiency, to be able to use a finisher, or just be able to deal decent damage. And that's to say nothing of the fact that you have equivalent skills for every type of enemy in the game and every or almost every other action in the game. I do really enjoy Let Us Cling Together. I really do. But I never finished it because it just got too frustrating in too many different ways. And it was such a shame. Because obviously, story-wise, character-wise, classes, like all that type of stuff, it's the same thing as in Reborn. And they're all phenomenal in Reborn. But some of the mechanical decisions in Let Us Cling Together just bogged it down too much. And I was playing it first in high school when I had all the time in the world, and then during the pandemic when I had all the time in the world. And both times, I never finished it. So, yeah, I know this is going to be a hot button one, I'm sure. But Reborn is the clearly superior product. You fix all of the issues that I had with Let Us Cling Together, and you're able to enjoy all the other mechanical depth and incredible stories and visuals and music and everything else without being bogged down in some of the most tedious grind I've ever experienced in a game. Whew. That one's going to be interesting. Moving on, Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters D tier. And it's such a shame. For those of you who don't know what it is, 40k Chaos Gate Demon Hunters is 40k XCOM. And if that sounds like the goddamn coolest thing on earth, it is, except for what the fuck some of the mechanical decisions in this game, man. I've tried to play it so many times, and I enjoy it while I do, but you kind of run into the Chimera Squad issue. Maybe it should be in couldn't finish, but I think it's really more just a matter of mechanical issues as opposed to just not liking the design. Where you have the Grey Knights, right? And the Grey Knights are like the super specialist, most badass space marines around. They're all psychers. They're all basically wizards. They're all built from the ground up to slay demons and be like near immune to the powers of the warp. And like they're spec ops. They can handle anything. And then with the way the mechanics of Demon Hunters or Chaos Gate is, your super badass Grey Knight can get shot to death by 2 Chaos Cultists. Well, that's just lame, isn't it? Also, if you use too many of your really sick psychic powers that you're supposed to be able to use to blow up demons, it's just going to make more of them spawn. Okay. And there's just a limitation here. Like it is a game that clearly had a budget that prevented it from doing as much as it could. Like there's such a limit on the variety of enemies that you could be fighting. Like you're fighting Chaos Space Marines, Plague Marines, the Death Guard specifically. And they're just so limited in their design. The different missions are so limited in their design. It is a game that was created in an era prior to Warhammer 40k having the huge renaissance that it's having currently, leading to stuff like Space Marine 2 or Rogue Trader. And I want to see a new version of this with a modern interest in 40k and a modern budget. Because I do think it could be great. If it actually was built to anywhere near the standard of XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, this would be one of my favorite games of all time, period. But it just has a divorce between story, lore, power levels, and what you should be capable of and what you should be fighting, and then what you're actually given. That makes it frustrating to play from a mechanical standpoint and annoying from a lover of the lore and the world standpoint. So, it's just too frustrating to play sometimes, man. All right, we're down to the last few here. Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn also goes in A tier. I love Radiant Dawn. A lot of people would probably rate it lower, but the fact that you have 4 distinct chapters with all these different angles of storyline is so sick. I love the graphics and the evolution of combat mechanics and graphical fidelity from Path of Radiance. Seeing all these new characters and how they fit into the world. Having tier 3 promotions is super cool. Lagoos feel way better to use. There's so many interesting different types of maps. The story feels like it's got such insane stakes for a Fire Emblem game. And the whole last dungeon that you go through, include like culminating in what is, I think, a really cool final boss at the end, absolutely makes Radiant Dawn awesome. It does have some issues with some characters just being absolutely garbage tier unless you dump everything into trying to use them, and it can cause limitations on certain maps that can be frustrating to work around. But all told, especially with the fact that you can carry stuff over from Path of Radiance, which is always a kind of meta mechanic that I adore in games, Radiant Dawn is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite games in the series, and again, much like Path of Radiance, I need to play both of them on the channel. It's going to be an absolute blast. I'm almost tempted to put Radiant Dawn in S tier, but I think it just has a couple of issues that make it not quite hit that bar. Phoenix Point. Phoenix Point, I think, goes in C tier. Phoenix Point is kind of like Chaos Gate, where it has all the trappings that I love about XCOM, and in a lot of ways has stuff that I love way more than XCOM, like the Lovecraftian kind of seafaring crab monster design, the ability to free aim your shots, the base like maintenance stuff all over the world, traveling all over the world to manage different havens, all the different interactions of the different factions and their world philosophies is so cool. But then near the end of the game, you just get so bogged down in trying to keep everything going that it's hard to get forward momentum on missions, and you'll run into missions sometimes that are just so overloaded with nasty enemies that you just find yourself saving and reloading over and over to try and find the one optimal outcome that you can get through to complete the mission without your entire squad getting crippled and essentially ruining the run. It slows things down immensely when the overall pace of the game in the first 2/3 is so good. I love this world. I would love to see a Phoenix Point 2 that refines things really, really well. But yeah, that last third of the game just gets too bogged down, man, for me to put it any higher. And it's a shame because I really love so much about Phoenix Point, even more than XCOM 2. Pit People... Yeah, gonna go and couldn't finish. Pit People is weird because it's got that like irreverent humor going on, which isn't normally my thing. But I played the whole thing that we played anyway, co-op with my buddy Eric, and that's just some of the most insane laughter I've had from a co-op experience ever. It's just so like it's that Newgrounds humor, right? Like kind of edgy, just kind of ridiculous and gross and silly, but so funny at the same time. And the nature of just like piling into a truck with your like weird band of mutants and going around and fighting stuff that you're told to, while like a weird giant space bear in the sky like tells you to do things and like is the narrator and making you do things that's just like stupid because they think it's funny. Like it is a blast. But the problem is that both Eric and I are very mechanics focused people when it comes to strategy games. And you hit a certain point with Pit People where it's just like you can't even tell why you're winning or losing anymore. And it's just like, I've got my big dude and we're just going to keep throwing him at stuff, and like he'll just keep killing things till suddenly he dies, and we're not really sure why. Like, And because we love mechanics and strategy so much, once the humor stopped carrying the game, there wasn't a mechanical core to keep it compelling for us, so we wound up dropping it. I've thought about going back to it over the years, so has he, but whenever we've brought it up to the other, usually like when he brings it up, I'm like, or when I bring it up, he's like, and then we just stopped worrying about it, and it's probably going to just sit there forever unfinished. So, a little bit of a shame, but if you are looking for a relatively fun co-op strategy light experience with a buddy, it's not a bad one to pick up, for sure. It was straight up made by the Newgrounds guys. Oh, okay, was it? Well, there you go. That explains a lot. That explains everything. Triangle Strategy. Triangle strategy is S tier. And I know Coffee Potato will have words with me for this, but triangle strategy marries strategic and mechanical complexity with world building and characters that know the history that they're built off of and pay strong homage to it while also being their own thing and letting the player actually have a hand in the story and actually make meaningful choices to see where you're going to wind up and what's going to happen to characters that I love. I adore everything about it. I really can't think of a fault with it, honestly. Like, it's so well crafted. If I had to come up with one fault, it's really just how swingy hard mode can be at times, as you guys saw during my playthrough. Like, I'm not going to begrudge the game for being super difficult when I'm trying to, like, get the golden route on my first run through and, like, find the perfect path through things and not use the firebomb traps and, like, be able to beat things in ways that you're not supposed to be able to beat them. That's on me. That's fine. But then, on the flip side, when you run into a Thunder Mage that can chunk 3/4 of your tankiest character's health with one spell. Meanwhile, your melee character is hitting said mage for like 1/4 of their health with a strong melee attack, and they're a mage and they're squishy. It gets like, holy shit sometimes. Like, you definitely get a disparity of stats sometimes on hard mode that can be very annoying to circumnavigate. But that's not always the case. And usually when you do run into that situation, the game seems to kind of know that, like, hey, we're really challenging you to figure out how to get around this. You have the tools, figure out how to use it. And I was able to always figure out how to use what I had available to get around a situation. It could just be really nasty at times. So I respect that. It just felt slightly overtuned at times. But nowhere near enough to knock it down out of S tier for me. I will always go back to this game. I would love to see either a sequel or another game built like in the same engine, the same type of mechanics, but maybe telling a different story in a different world, whatever. Like an Octopath 2 type of thing, that type of deal. I would love it. I'd be like frothing at the mouth for it, really. If that ever gets announced, we'll be covering that like crazy on this channel, for sure. Tri-Strat is phenomenal. Absolutely. And I'm glad to see people in chat agreeing with me. Triangle #1 best strategy RPG ever made. Like my dream game come to life. It was insane. Hell yeah. I hear that, man. I could not believe what I was seeing when they first announced it. And then when I got to play the demo, and it was like 3 hours long, and every mechanic made my jaw approach the floor a little bit more, drop a little bit lower. It was nuts. Absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, definitely deserves S tier. Battle for Wesnoth. This is one that most of you guys probably have not heard of before. Boy, again, co-op hilarity and shenanigans have ensued a lot with this game, and I really enjoy it, but it's also one of those games that gets so friggin' frustrating. So Battle for Wesnoth is a free, like, community-driven game where all the assets are open source, and people can just kind of build whatever they want for it. And there's a whole online repository of different campaigns, classes, races, scenarios, etc. that you can download. It is a hex-based game rather than a square-based game. And the whole idea is that you have different areas of a 2D map that you're on, and you have a character that starts in the center of your little castle, and then every turn, almost in like an Advance Wars kind of way, which I didn't put on here because it's not an RPG. Battle for Wesnoth is more RPG, and I'll explain why. But if you're wondering where Advance Wars was, that's more of a strict tactics strategy game without the RPG. But Battle for Wesnoth allows you to each turn use gold to build different units for your chosen faction or race in those sections, and then you send them out to like capture properties and like explore the fog of war and fight enemies and stuff. It's really cool. It's a lot of really fun factions. There's all these different official and fan-made campaigns that have good storylines, a lot of interesting different maps. Music is really good. It's one of those games where it's fun to just sit and get sucked into it and play through a simple turn-based strategy experience. The problem comes from the fact that it is a game that relies very heavily on layered hit rates. And this is something that I'm now able to relate to things like Warhammer 40k, playing the tabletop. It's so friggin' hard to get a shot through in 40k. Because basically it's like, okay, I declare an attack with a squad on a squad. So I have all of my attacks. You're like, oh yeah, I've got like 20 shots. I'm going to destroy you. First you have to roll to hit. Then, of all of those hits, you have to roll to wound. So like, yeah, okay, your shot didn't go wide, you hit them. But does your shot penetrate the armor? Okay. Then your opponent gets to roll to see if they save, to see if they actually get affected. Like, in idea being like, oh, the shot like went through like a soft fleshy bit that's not really debilitating in any way, so they don't take a wound from it. Like, they'll have to get it patched up, but they're fine, that kind of thing. Like, or it just like took off a chip of their shoulder armor and they're fine, that type of thing. You've got 3 different sets of rolls before you even get into rerolls, modifiers, different things like that you have to get through just to try and get a point of damage on something. And Wesnoth seeks to emulate that by having very high numbers of attacks most of the time, with very low chances to hit and very extreme terrain modifiers. So it's not uncommon for like a basic soldier with a sword and a shield in Wesnoth to have like 6, 7, 8 attacks, but because of built-in accuracy and terrain, to only have 30% chance to hit on any of those attacks. And it is not uncommon for them to miss every single one. And it gets so frustrating. It's one of those games where confirmation bias feels like it's rearing its ugly head, but it also feels like the RNG is just screwed up. Because the number of times that I've run up, or like me and Eric and Dante or whoever will be playing, and like we literally have like 6 dudes between our 3 armies on one enemy, and with all of our attacks, it's like 50 hits total between very high HP values, relatively low damage per hit on a lot of things, and just the low chance to hit. It just won't die. And then it'll crack back and kill like 4 of our things. And it's like the same tier of class, because you can get promotions, right? Like every time you level up a character, they promote. That's how long it takes to get XP. So like it just gets so frustrating because you work so hard to actually get a character to level up and promote to a new class, but then because of the RNG, they can just get torn away immediately. It's like, I tried so hard to get that. God damn it, just hit it. Just hit the thing, for God's sake. It's compelling, but you need a level of patience that's really hard to reach with this game. Unless you're willing to just throw yourself to the winds, just be like, whatever happens, happens. Maybe we get there, maybe we lose. I don't know, whatever, man. So, yeah, I wish that there was a slightly different way that they went about making hit rates volatile in that way. Like, even you're guaranteed to hit things like magic that avoids all terrain modifiers still only has like a 60 or 70% chance to hit. It's nuts. So yeah, Battle for Wesnoth is an interesting one. I have to do a video covering this at some point, but I think it's C tier because it has its issues. Now, XCOM Enemy Within. We're in the last 2 here. XCOM Enemy Within, I think, is very solidly A tier. It has issues compared to XCOM 2. Like, it's just one of those first game, there's things that didn't quite have hammered out type deals. But it's also a game where I can sit down and start a campaign, and again, 8 hours later, it's like the middle of the night or dawn is breaking. And it's like, oh my God, I'm halfway through this campaign. It's just very compelling to play. There's very little friction keeping you from just getting into a mission and going. There's not a lot of interruption between different actions or keeping the gameplay flowing. And it's always so satisfying getting your soldiers to rank up, getting their new abilities, doing new research to get new guns and armor. There's always something new happening. And it's a cadence that they kept with XCOM 2. But because there's just more to XCOM 2, more interesting layers of mechanics and different classes, with hindsight, I can't put the original XCOM higher, but it's still an A-tier game, absolutely.
Broken souls. And yet
now,
our fortunes ride with them.
Finally. Oh, Kayazar has subscribed. Welcome, Kayazar. Very good to have you. Thank you for joining us, my friend. Hope you're enjoying your time around these parts. We are going into the Breach. Into the Breach, I've had a lot of back and forth on. I've talked about it on the channel before. It's one of those games that has a very high barrier to entry because you have to be so precise with all of your actions. But once it finally clicks, you can just go. Every once in a while, you run into a frustrating situation where you just can't figure out a way to save a run. But because it's a roguelike, it's not a huge deal when that happens. The main thing that keeps me from ranking Into the Breach super high, and I think it's probably going to be in B tier, but low B tier, is how long it can take to get new stuff and then to figure out how to use it. Because you unlock things by completing certain achievements, and it's like you get an achievement which gets you like a medal or 2 medals or something like that, which is like do certain things with certain squads, and just the game might not ever present you with an opportunity to be able to do that with that squad for a long time. It can take a while to get the medals that you need to unlock other squads and keep experimenting with new different types of abilities. It also has a certain element of randomness to it where it's like, I just can't successfully complete this objective with the tools that I have at hand and with the way that the map is set up. Or I might just not be able to rescue this like time pod that's going to get me progression. So it's like you hit barriers where you just don't feel like you can get the progression that you want. And you kind of feel like you've wasted your time a little bit, which is always a rough feeling whenever you're playing any sort of roguelike. That said, the last time that I put a bunch of time into the Breach, there was some combination of wording that just didn't sound right. It works, but that's when it finally clicked for me, and I got super sucked into it for a while. So normally, originally, I would have had Into the Breach ranked way lower, but I've come around on it a lot. It's still hard to get into. There's a reason that it didn't do nearly as well as FTL. It's the same devs, but it's one of those games that if you can get it to click for you, it will resonate pretty well and you'll have some good times with it. So, okay. I think we're good. I feel very confident about where I have all of this stuff ranked. I don't think I need to move anything around. I'll be curious to see what people have to say about it in the YouTube comments once I've trimmed all of this stuff down. It's still going to be a longer video. There's almost no way that I'm going to have it out tonight. But I feel pretty good about where everything is placed and the kind of reasoning behind where I placed everything. So, before we wrap up, what do you guys think in the YouTube chat here? Because we're going to be done after this. My voice is shot. And want to be able to go hang out with Jane. Dinner will be ready in a couple of hours. So I want to start wrapping up here. This has been a great comeback stream. 4 hours later, talked about Japan, talked about what's going on in life, got the tier list figured out. I'm pretty happy with all this for sure. I'm excited to get back into the normal routine as well. But yeah, let me know. What do you guys think here? What do we got going on? I'll read through what y'all have here quick before we wrap up. Canadian says, good list. Stars pushing Iconoclast, and Canadian's been pushing Xenoblade Chronicles for about 3 to 4 years. Yep. Well, that's so you weren't here for this, Star, but Jane and I are going to be moving soon, and I'm actually going to have a dedicated room as a studio now. So I'm hoping that maybe having that separated space will make it easier to get more stuff like that going. We'll see. I can't make any promises because, I'm still working the day job and everything. But it'll be a lot easier now that my setup isn't in the middle of our living room. And we're in situations like this where, like, poor Jane is stuck probably feeling like there's not much that she can do because I'm doing a stream right now. So, yep. I know, darling. You're very accommodating, and I appreciate it. It helps when, you guys throw 70 gifted memberships at me over the course of the stream, or like we get a bunch of super chats or a bunch of views on videos, so we have good monetary investment that helps soothe the beast. But having my own studio so Jane can be doing her own thing in the apartment and not worried about interrupting what I'm doing is going to make it way easier to do more stuff like that. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to more gaming streams. What are those games in FFT tier? We've got Final Fantasy Tactics, FE4 Genealogy of the Holy War, Tactics Ogre Reborn, Darkest Dungeon, Fire Emblem Fates, Unicorn Overlord, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, and Triangle Strategy. Those are our S tier, FFT tier games. Great list, some hot takes, but I think most people are cool with it. For now, we'll see what happens when we get to the YouTube comments, but That'll be interesting to see. Great list, good list. Drop more suggestions in Discord. Nice, 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 nice. Very good. Tried Battle for Wesnoth. The time limits for one of the campaigns was hard. The amount of units spawning got too much, so I dropped it. I feel like I know exactly what mission you're talking about. No, this has been awesome, guys. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to go and probably make some honey lemon tea to soothe my voice, because, boy, jumping right back into this stream after not having done anything on mic for 3 weeks. Definitely a choice. But it's been an absolute blast, and it's good to be back, you guys. Absolutely. Absolutely. Plenty of good stuff to come. I will... should have the video of this out tomorrow. And then I'll spoil it for y'all who are here. We're going to be having a video covering Blind Coco Studio, who's been here periodically throughout the course of the stream. His Gales of Nayeli demo, another indie Fire Emblem style game that has a lot of good stuff going for it. So that should be out probably Monday, maybe Tuesday. And then, of course, there's a ton of other stuff to do coming up. But for now, going to get out of here. Thank you once again to Link Jedi Master for the literal 70 gifted memberships. My God, over the course of this stream. That was absolutely batshit insane. Hell of a way to come back. And thank you to all of you for being here as well. Thank you to those of you in the YouTube comments discussing the tier list in a hopefully respectful manner. And to all of you, my name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I do so hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, be good to each other, everybody. Bye now. I'll talk to y'all very soon. Peace.